say fight back!
Well, it's the fall, so it's time for the Free Speech TV Fund Drive. And here we are asking for your help once again. One of the wonderful things about Free Speech TV and a lot of independent and nonprofit media is that you don't have to put up with commercials. People who listen to my radio show on the commercial side, it gets interrupted constantly. During those interruptions that people listening to commercial radio, they're hearing commercials. I'm still taking calls and talking to you. It's one of the things that we do for Free Speech TV, that we've always done for Free Speech TV. It makes a substantially more difficult day for me, including bathroom breaks. But it's the right thing, right? It's the right thing to do, is to put together an actual hour show that you can watch for a whole hour, with including the book reports and everything else. Rather than taking 4 breaks an hour and throwing old content and crap like that in there. So we're really dancing our hearts out for Free Speech TV and for you. And we would appreciate your help here with Free Speech TV. So your contribution today, your one-time contributions, a portion of those go to support our program as well. So if you make one-time contributions of $20, $50, $100, $150, $250, or $1,000, that's great. That's really helpful to us, and it's really helpful to Free Speech TV. So please consider calling now and making your contribution. The number is 877-378-8669, as I recall. Is that right, Nate? It's not written down on this email. 877-378-8669. With a $20 gift, you get a 3x5-inch all-weather sticker, which is basically a picture of me, and it says the Thom Hartmann Program. With a $50 gift, you get a Change the Channel Free Speech TV tote bag. With a $100 gift, you get a Free Speech TV any functional adult long-sleeve shirt, and the sizes vary from small to XXX large. With a $150 gift, you get my new book, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America. Now, this book is not yet shipping, but we got our copies last week, and so I'm assuming Free Speech TV is going to be getting theirs in the next week or two. So, and I'll be signing book plates, and we'll put them in the books, so you'll have an autographed copy of this book, and we'll get those off to you. That's with a $150 one-time contribution. With a $250 one-time contribution, you can participate in a virtual meet and greet. That is an off-the-record conversation where we just all meet on Zoom or Skype or however. I think we're using Zoom now to do this. You just pop in, you'll get an invitation link in email, and it'll say, click here, and it'll pop open a window, and I won't be able to see you because there's going to be a whole bunch of us, but you'll be able to see me, and I'll be able to hear you. And, you can ask any question you want, and I'll do my very best to give you just a straight-up answer. And, we can have conversation as a group and individually, within the context of the group on that. Just like when people come here for our actual meet and greets, our physical meet and greets, we hang out in the studio for the last hour of the show, and then we walk down the street to a restaurant and have a nice lunch together. We can do that with this virtual meet and greet, this $250 one-time contribution virtual meet and greet. But you don't have to go anywhere. If you don't live in this neighborhood, if you don't live near Portland, Oregon, you don't have to buy an airplane ticket or anything else. Now, on the other hand, if you would like to come see Portland, and I got to tell you, particularly if you're interested in meatless Mondays, if you're interested in trying to go for, a little less meat in your diet, although people come for our meet and greets and they can order anything they want on the menu, and I'm not going to pick on you, don't worry. But Portland, this just blows my mind. There's this app called Happy Cow that just shows vegan restaurants wherever you are. It's kind of like Open Table or something like that, one of these apps. And Portland's got like 20 or 30 vegan restaurants. It's just incredible. And hundreds of, probably over 100 restaurants that heavily lean toward vegetarian. And when I was in New York, I pulled up this app, and there weren't as many restaurants as there are in Portland. It's just an incredible food town. So if you are into food, come to our meet and greet. Now, we're just going to get a nice meal at a nice restaurant that anybody can get anything that they want at. But if you're thinking about coming and seeing Portland with a $1,000 contribution, you can spend an hour here with us in the last hour of the show in the studio, and then we'll have lunch together, and that'll all be nice. But mostly, let's support Free Speech TV. Your one-time contributions are really appreciated. Please call now, 877-378-8669. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number for Free Speech TV. And of course, you can also donate online at freespeech.org. And if you donate during the time that our show is on the air, then we get credit for that as well. So please give us a shout now, right? 877-378-8669. Thanks so much. Every day here on the Thom Hartmann Program, Louise and I and our team, Sean, Nate, Shira, Dave, Chase, Sue, Nigel, Ron, we all work to put together the very, very best show we possibly can. And there's an enormous amount of work that goes into the show. And one of the things that comes out of that is a lot of content, a lot of specific information that we go through and we dig out and, we want to share with you. And Sue puts that into our newsletter every week. And I think you will, if you don't already receive our newsletter, it comes in email every day, about an hour after we're off the air, or maybe a couple hours after we're off the air. And Sue goes through and pulls literally every link to every story that we talked about and puts it into the newsletter. It's free. We don't sell a list or anything. You complete safety and security. There's no charge. There's no nothing. Just plug in your email address over at thomhartmann.com, and you get signed up for the newsletter. It's all fairly obvious. You'll see it on the website. So check it out, thomhartmann.com. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Well, that was a remarkable, absolutely remarkable town hall last night on CNN. I hope you were able to catch all of the candidates giving their pitches, and I would love to get your feedback on them. If you watched the CNN town hall last night on climate change, they did a series. Frankly, I thought this was more informative than any of the debates we've had so far. We had an opportunity to actually see candidates for President of the United States, Democratic candidates for the President of the United States, take questions, give answers, get challenged. This was far more useful to me as a voter, as a potential, not a potential, as a primary voter in the Democratic primary. This format, I realize it was 7 hours. It wasn't actually 7 hours because they broke it up and there was news in between and, quack, quack. But basically, it spanned over a substantial period of time from the afternoon into prime time on CNN. I've got a couple takeaways from this, and I want to get to them, and I want to have a conversation about them. The thing that I was very impressed by virtually all of the candidates. I think everybody brought their A game to this, with the exception of Joe Biden, which really concerns me. And if you are a Joe Biden supporter and you watched the debate last night, or the town hall last night, and you watched Joe Biden's performance, I would love to hear from you as to why you continue to support Joe Biden. I've been scrupulous up to this point about not trying to insert my own opinions into this Democratic primary. I have my own personal opinions about who would be the best candidate or the best candidates, and I've leaned publicly and on the air on a number of occasions toward Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders because they're the two candidates who are polling above 3%. And I'm basically, anybody who's polling under 3% right now, with all the exposure that these candidates have had with 4 days of debates, 2 complete sets of debates, and newspaper articles and internet and everything else everybody's been doing, I think if they're under 3%, they're probably fairly marginal, and they're not, they don't have a shot that they're really running for a cabinet position or for Senate or, whatever to raise their profile, and, which is fine. I get that. The one exception to that is that if Joe Biden drops out of the race, and after watching his performance last night, I was sitting there, Louise and I were sitting there just with our mouths open. I mean, I was like, if the whole country was seeing this, and I realized the whole country wasn't. I mean, CNN at any given moment probably has a few 100,000 or maybe at the most 1 million viewers in some of those day parts. But this was early prime time. It might have been even a couple of million viewers. I think if everybody was seeing this, that it would be the end of Biden's candidacy, in my opinion. He was rambling. He was forgetting where he was. In his thoughts. He was. One of the very first questions is, why are you leaving here to go to a fundraiser at the home of a guy who is the co-founder of a liquid natural gas company, a fossil fuel executive? And Biden was like, well, I don't think that's the case. And then they came back and said, well, yeah, it is the case. And then, Anderson Cooper kept fact-checking him, but it wasn't the fact-checking that flipped me out. And it wasn't the open reveal that, Joe Biden's taking big corporate money. He's done that his whole entire life. What shocked me was his answers to the questions. They were non-answers. And in many cases, it seemed like he was just totally confused. I mean, we all talk about how Donald Trump is slipping. And, there's something wrong with Donald Trump. Well, last night really flipped me out. I mean, I'm really concerned. If Joe Biden is our nominee, that Donald Trump is guaranteed a second term. As incompetent as Donald Trump is, and I realize these are really strong words. And so, I guess I'm saying if you're a Biden supporter and you watched that, now if you didn't watch that, don't bother calling. I mean, I'm not, because this is a singular moment. I mean, this is, it just blew my mind. And I was watching on Twitter, I was watching the hashtag, climate crisis talk or climate town hall or whatever it was. I think it was climate town hall was the hashtag on Twitter. And what I'm telling you right now is what I was hearing from person after person after person. I mean, it was just like, the Twitter blew up on this. And I'm very concerned. So anyhow, I wanted to toss that out, and I will pick up your calls on that topic and others. Who else did you see? What did you see over at Daily Kos? Andrew Yang kind of won the Daily Kos straw poll. Elizabeth Warren came in second, Bernie third. But I thought all of the candidates, Kamala Harris allowed, forgetting which person was interviewing her now after watching hours of this stuff. I don't think it was Anderson Cooper, but in any case, allowed herself to get caught in this trap that Anderson Cooper tried to catch Elizabeth Warren in about. Let's talk about plastic straws. Let's talk about light bulbs. People like those light bulbs that are shaped like candles. You want to take those away from people? Hey, I've got LED light bulbs that are shaped like candles. It's a BS argument. It was the talking points of the fossil fuel industry that the moderators kept throwing at these Democratic candidates. Now, it kind of pissed me off, frankly, but on the other hand, I'm thinking, these are the exact same kinds of fossil fuel industry talking points that will be thrown at at the general debates and at candidates in general, because the fossil fuel industry and big pharma basically, fund the media, and they're not going to ignore that. But so it was infuriating on the one hand, but on the other hand, it was so cool when Anderson Cooper said, well, what about light bulbs? The other one he said was, you want to take away people's gas-powered cars and make them drive electric cars that are slower? And I'm like, what? I mean, I've got a plug-in Prius, that goes 30 miles on pure electricity. And when it's on pure electricity, I stomp on the gas pedal, and that thing can lay rubber. That thing takes off like nobody's business. I've driven in several friends' Priuses, and they're like a rocket ship. It's like a jet taking off. You're pinned back in the seat. I can't, when I flip my Prius into gasoline mode, I can't get anything close to the pickup I've got in electric mode. And so I tweeted, obviously Anderson Cooper's never driven an electric car. But, again, we get these fossil fuel talking points out of the CNN guys. But, I thought Elizabeth Warren pushed back brilliantly when he asked her about the whole light bulb thing. And she was like, really? Seriously? I mean, you want to talk about that and straws when we're talking about the fossil fuel industry producing 70% of all the poison that's in the atmosphere? I thought it was great that several people during the evening pointed out that intensive animal agriculture, and specifically meat, was also a major contributor to the fossil crisis, to the energy crisis, or to the climate change crisis. It's starting to sound like Joe Biden here. So there's that. Number two, I wanted to point out, 21 Tories have now left Boris Johnson. And the Conservative Party kicked them out of the party. 21 of them said, Boris, you're nuts. We're not going to go along with this thing. We want to have we want to have Brexit, but we don't want to have a hard Brexit. We want to have some sort of negotiations with the European Union so that there's some sort of reasonable transition into British sovereignty. Now, that's interesting for us as Americans. Gee, look what's going on in the UK. But it raises a much larger question that nobody in the media is asking, which is, why is the same thing not happening in the Republican Party in the United States? Why are Republicans not standing up to Trump? Why are they not saying, this guy's nuts? And frankly, I think it's because of the power of big money. In the UK, they limit the ability of billionaires and corporations to own politicians. As I recall, and I could be wrong on these numbers, so please, double check them, and I will try to double check them a little later on in the program. But as I recall, when an election is called, there's a 6-week maximum campaign period, and there's a limit to how much money can be spent on those campaigns. And I recall a number, but I'm not even going to say it because I'm not certain of my facts, so I'm going to stay in that regard. But as a result of that, it's a lot harder for billionaires and industries like the fossil fuel industry to own politicians in the UK. It's still possible, and it obviously happens, but it's a hell of a lot harder there, and in any other developed democracy in the world than here in the United States. And so here in the U.S., you've got Republicans who are still cowering before the gun industry, and I'm going to get into that a little later in the program, and still cowering before the fossil fuel industry, and still going and we'll find out if Joe Biden's going to do this fundraiser tonight at the home of the co-founder of this liquid natural gas company or not. But, still, with their hand out to the corporate group. We've got that in the United States. They don't have that in the UK. Which brings me back to the point that my final point on the primaries, and I was mentioning some of the secondary candidates. If Joe Biden continues his performances like he did last night in the debate, or in the town hall, in the climate town hall, if he continues to lose track of where he is and cede time because he can't remember what he was saying and things like that, if that continues to happen, right now, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren have about 40% of the Democratic vote locked up, which means 60% is up for grabs. Joe Biden's got about 20% of that 60%. So if Biden goes down, then the question is, who fills that place? Who is also willing to take corporate money, but is, still a good Democrat? And I'm guessing it's going to be Kamala Harris. But I'm also guessing that there's a couple of, quote, marginal candidates, secondary candidates, people who are polling 2%, 3%, 4%, and probably Amy Klobuchar is at the front of that list, who are staying in the race because they're thinking that it's possible that Joe Biden's going to go down, and there's going to be a demand for a so-called centrist, somebody who's corporate friendly and who, but who still has generally Democratic Party values. The whole thing is fascinating. Anyhow, we'll continue the conversation after the break here.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
It's past the hour on the Thom Hartmann Program. We'll be right back with your calls and more of the news of the day. Stick around. And welcome back. Let's see here. Corky in Rochester, New York. Hey, Corky, what's on your mind today?
Well, I just want to know if anybody thinks we need a new commander-in-chief yet.
Yeah, I think that's a given, Corky.
Well, I don't know with his support he's got. I don't understand those people. But Joe Biden, he's just laying back waiting for he's not giving out all of his
Did you see the fossil fuel town hall or the climate town hall last night on CNN? Corky, did you see Biden's performance?
Yes, I did. And I saw Elizabeth Warren. And Elizabeth Warren is a good vice presidential candidate. I don't think she's ready for prime time. Joe Biden has got the knowledge of everything that was in place. And he's got to go back and put it all back together.
You watched his performance and you are not concerned?
No, he's not. He's never been a gotcha candidate.
I'm not talking about gotcha. I'm talking about being able to hold a thought and remember a fact. What part of Joe's performance last night? And I'll tell you the one thing about Elizabeth Warren's performance last night that concerned me was she was being a little too chatty and too friendly to people who were just asking questions and trying to engage them. I get that works in a town hall where you've got 40 or 50 people or in somebody's living room. That's a really, really good technique. But I think when you've got an auditorium full of people and somebody asks a question, people want you to get right to the answer. And I, maybe this is just my bias because I do a lot of public speaking and I take questions from the audience, and that's my thought is this person is asking the question, but they're not they're not auditioning to be my friend. So I think that she needs to recalibrate that. But I was really concerned that Biden couldn't remember what he was talking about on several occasions.
Well, he's got his thoughts, and then you ask him something different. He's always been like that.
I know. That's why 3 times he ran for president and didn't make it past the primaries.
Yeah, well, look at Trump. What did we forgive him for?
Well, if Trump is your standard, Corky, then we've got a big problem.
I'm not saying he's my standard. What I'm saying is that Joe Biden has got his own political prowess, and you got to get him by the primaries before he comes out with his tough stance. Okay,
so your confidence in Joe is that he's going to turn into Macho Joe. He's going to turn into the Hulk after the primaries and take on Donald Trump. Wouldn't you see evidence of that when he has to take on Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and Kamala Harris, the big front runners?
No, he's not going to trash his own party because he realizes that maybe one of those guys will beat him.
Oh, I'm not talking about trashing people. I'm just talking about doing a hell of a performance that'll cause people to say, wow, Joe is really brilliant. I'd much rather have him than Kamala Harris or Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders.
I think Elizabeth Warren is a good vice president. I don't think any of them are presidential material. What I'm concerned about is somebody goes in there and puts everything back the way it was.
Yeah, well, see, my concern, Corky, is that the way it wasn't working. For 40 years, we've had neoliberal economics, running this country, Reaganism running this country, and neither Bill Clinton nor Barack Obama pushed back on that. And I think America's ready for a president to say, no, we actually do hope for a real change. We'll be back. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and Bob in Skokie, Illinois. Hey, Bob, what's up?
Tom, I watched it last night, and that was exactly my reaction. Vice President Biden could not complete a thought without, it seemed to me, trying to inject one of the important points that he had been primed to make. And so he was cutting himself off in the middle of a thought.
Over and over again. I mean, it's impossible. He was just over-prepped.
I mean, it seemed like even within each question, he was doing it.
Yeah.
And it was happening for, I don't know, I guess each session was about 45 minutes, I guess.
I think they were between 20 and 30 minutes, actually. But
yeah. And so I watched it, and I'm not really concerned because I felt from the beginning that as much as I like the guy and associate positive things with him because of Obama, that he's a little bit too old. And in fact, I think it's quite striking when you realize that the comparative ages of Biden and Bernie and Warren, and they're pretty much, in the same area, and how sharp Bernie was, how even sharper I thought Warren was. And how
I'm not certain
it was for Biden.
I'm not certain that this is an age thing, and I'm not trying to make that assertion. I'd like to take that out of the equation. Joe Biden has been rambling Joe, gaffe Joe, literally from the get-go. The first time he ran for president in 1988, he couldn't get past the primary because of this. Number one. Number two, I think he was over-prepped. I think somebody tried to cram 100 facts into his brain, and half of them stuck and half of them were just floating around out there, and he was desperately trying to grab for them. And I have done that myself. I've walked into situations where I crammed and I ended up just confused.
And that's when I do that, and I get the opportunity to do that. I always have note cards too. Basically,
yeah, there you go. Yeah, and he didn't have that luxury. We can cut him some slack in that regard. But in that case, it shouldn't be that he pulls out of the race. It should be that he gets new people prepping him, because that was just terrible. Yeah. Bob, I got to move along, but thank you for the call. Dawn in Atlanta, Georgia. Hey, Dawn, what's on your mind today? Dawn?
First of all, Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, please get your mouth close to the microphone.
Okay. I did not see the forum, but I just wanted to say that I'm a woman in my 60s, early 60s, and I will not vote for Joe Biden in the general election.
Okay, well,
if he wins the nomination, I will not vote for him.
Why would that be?
Well, for a couple of reasons. I have no desire to return to, quote, the normalcy before Trump. It wasn't normal.
But if you don't vote for Joe Biden, you're going to get more of Trump.
Well, you know what? We're already going down the tubes.
I mean, if Joe Biden is the nominee, I will vote for him in a heartbeat, Dawn. I will campaign for him.
We might as well go down fast. This drying it out.
You're sounding like Susan Sarandon,
Tom, I've always voted. Tom, I have never voted for a Republican for president in all of the years that I have.
But voting for Jill Stein would have been the same thing, and that's what Susan Sarandon was recommending.
No, I'm talking about I have voted for the nominee of the Democratic Party.
So you will vote for Joe Biden?
Stand up and be counted for. It is time for us. We need people who are capable, and Joe Biden is not capable.
Okay, Dawn, thank you for your call. Again, I would prefer to speak with people who actually saw the town hall, the climate change town halls on CNN last night. We'll be back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
We'll be back with more of the news of the day. I haven't even gotten to Trump's Sharpie Gate. Oh, my God. Stick around. Well, it's the fall, so it's time for the Free Speech TV Fund Drive. And here, well, it's the fall, so it's time for the Free Speech TV Fund Drive. And here we are asking for your help once again. One of the wonderful things about Free Speech TV and a lot of independent and nonprofit media is that you don't have to put up with commercials. People who listen to my radio show on the commercial side, it gets interrupted constantly. During those interruptions that people listening to commercial radio, they're hearing commercials. I'm still taking calls and talking to you. It's one of the things that we do for Free Speech TV, that we've always done for Free Speech TV. It makes a substantially more difficult day for me, including bathroom breaks. But it's the right thing, right? It's the right thing to do, is to put together an actual hour show that you can watch for a whole hour, with including the book reports and everything else, rather than taking 4 breaks an hour and throwing old content and crap like that in there. So we're really dancing our hearts out for Free Speech TV and for you. And we would appreciate your help here with Free Speech TV. So your contribution today, your one-time contributions, a portion of those go to support our program as well. So if you make one-time contributions of $20, $50, $100, $150, $250, or $1,000, that's great. That's really helpful to us, and it's really helpful to Free Speech TV. So please consider calling now and making your contribution. The number is 877-378-8669, as I recall. Is that right, Nate? It's not written down on this email. 877-378-8669. With a $20 gift, you get a 3x5-inch all-weather sticker, which is basically a picture of me, and it says the Thom Hartmann Program. With a $50 gift, you get a Change the Channel Free Speech TV tote bag. With a $100 gift, you get a Free Speech TV any functional adult long sleeve shirt, and the sizes vary from small to XXX large. With a $150 gift, you get my new book, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America. Now, this book is not yet shipping, but we got our copies last week, and so I'm assuming Free Speech TV is going to be getting theirs in the next week or two. So, and I'll be signing book plates, and we'll put them in the books, so you'll have an autographed copy of this book, and we'll get those off to you. That's with a $150 one-time contribution. With a $250 one-time contribution, you can participate in a virtual meet and greet. That is an off-the-record conversation where we just all meet on Zoom or Skype or however. I think we're using Zoom now to do this. You just pop in, you'll get an invitation link in email, and it'll say, click here, and it'll pop open a window, and I won't be able to see you because there's going to be a whole bunch of us, but you'll be able to see me, and I'll be able to hear you. And, you can ask any question you want, and I'll do my very best to give you just a straight up answer. And, we can have conversation as a group and individually, within the context of the group on that. Just like when people come here for our actual meet and greets, our physical meet and greets, we hang out in the studio for the last hour of the show, and then we walk down the street to a restaurant and have a nice lunch together. We can do that with this virtual meet and greet, this $250 one-time contribution virtual meet and greet. But you don't have to go anywhere. If you don't live in this neighborhood, if you don't live near Portland, Oregon, you don't have to buy an airplane ticket or anything else. Now, on the other hand, if you would like to come see Portland, and I got to tell you, particularly if you're interested in Meatless Mondays, if you're interested in trying to go for, a little less meat in your diet, although people come for our meet and greets, and they can order anything they want on the menu, and I'm not going to pick on you, don't worry. But Portland, this just blows my mind. There's this app called Happy Cow that just shows vegan restaurants wherever you are. It's kind of like Open Table or something like that, one of these apps. And Portland's got like 20 or 30 vegan restaurants. It's just incredible. And hundreds of, probably over 100 restaurants that heavily lean toward vegetarian. And when I was in New York, I pulled up this app, and there weren't as many restaurants as there are in Portland. It's just an incredible food town. So if you are into food, come to our meet and greet. Now, we're just going to get a nice meal at a nice restaurant that anybody can get anything that they want at. But if you're thinking about coming and seeing Portland with a $1,000 contribution, you can spend an hour here with us in the last hour of the show in the studio, and then we'll have lunch together, and that'll all be nice. But mostly, let's support Free Speech TV. Your one-time contributions are really appreciated. Please call now, 877-378-8669. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number for Free Speech TV. And of course, you can also donate online at freespeech.org. And if you donate during the time that our show is on the air, then we get credit for that as well. So please give us a shout now, right? 877-378-8669. Thanks so much.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And boy, 6 Republican senators, Laura Clausen reporting over at Daily Kos, 6 Republican senators who are up for re-election in 2020 and who voted to support Donald Trump's emergency wall declaration are losing millions of dollars in order to pay for that wall. Thom Tillis in North Carolina, he's up for re-election. His state, North Carolina, is losing $80 million to the wall. A $32 million elementary school at Fort Bragg. This is all military, by the way. These are military bases. A Fort Bragg elementary school has been canceled. There's a battalion complex, an ambulatory care center at Camp Lejeune, scheduled to get a $40 million upgrade. Not happening. Florida is losing military construction to money that's going to hurricane-damaged bases, or was. Now it's going to the wall. Kentucky, Majority Leader Mitch McConnell's state, he's losing $62 million, which was slated to rebuild his school. Sorry, military kids, Trump needs his wall. Martha McSally in Arizona, she's up for election after losing in 2018 and being appointed by after John McCain died. She said, the Defense Department says, I'm good, no problem. No, Arizona's losing $30 million. Cory Gardner in Arizona, his state is losing $8 million. Lindsey Graham, South Carolina, his state is losing $11 million. This is all in military spending within the state to help, mostly to help military families. Senator John Cornyn, he's losing his state, Texas, is losing $48 million. Some serious stuff. Anyhow, back to your calls and thoughts on all this stuff. Jan in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Hey, Jan, what's up?
Hi, Tom. I enjoy your show, and I always learn so much.
Thank you.
I watched Biden, and I always give him a second chance to the third chance. But then I followed up with Colbert, thinking he'd be more relaxed, and he was just as bad, and Colbert called him out on it.
Really? I didn't see the Colbert show last night. I assumed that he'd be fine in just a casual environment.
Well, the audience adored him, and he ate that up, and he was trying to be funny. But Colbert really got to a lot of good questions that we never hear on any other cable news.
Right.
But anyway, I can give him an explanation for all the stammering because he had a stuttering problem. So getting past that, he doesn't come up with anything new. And he's so defensive that he starts to raise his voice. But the one that really turned me off is talking about Obamacare and taking credit for it. This is what I did, and I made Obamacare happen. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we also need to keep in mind Barack Obama initially campaigned on single-payer health care. I can play the clip of it. Yeah, and we ended up with a compromise. He
did not handle that donor question that gentleman offered him, and he didn't even know how to squirm his way out of it. But Elizabeth, I found, was a little too manicky, even though she was up there like professor, very informative. But I was most impressed with Yang. He has some great ideas. I hope he's an advisor for whoever wins.
Yeah, I think the odds of Andrew Yang being the nominee for the Democratic Party are 0 because he has no political experience, and I don't think politicians, people inside the Democratic Party, or voters for that matter, are willing to take that big a chance. I mean, at least be on the city council. Pete Buttigieg is a mayor of a small town. I mean, that's some credibility. Kamala Harris has worked her way up through the ranks. I think she has a good shot. A lot of these people, even Amy Klobuchar. But my big concern with Joe Biden was that he was over-prepped. And he's the old Joe Biden from the last couple of times he's run for president, where he just has a challenge, a problem, stringing thoughts together and things. And I'm concerned that even Donald Trump could eat his lunch in a debate. But we'll see.
Also, I thought he was underprepared, or he just forgets. He loses his train of thought.
Yeah, it was one of the other. Jen, we're starting to get redundant here, but I need to move along to another caller. Thank you for the call. It's great to hear from you. Let's see here. Is it Dinah in Lakewood, New Brunswick, New Jersey?
Yes, it is. Hi, Tom. I love your show, and thank you so much for finally letting us speak our mind on our views on some of the candidates. So,
and let's not turn this into a Biden bash. I mean, I don't.
No. I'm not at all. But the idea that age is even an issue is not an issue. It's all about policy, and Joe Biden definitely completely blew it again last night. He's absolutely old enough to know better on every issue. He has about a 40-year track record in the Senate, and he is bringing up things that he had worked on, legislation in the 80s and the 90s. He seemed out of touch, kind of clueless, a little lost. Definitely right from the start, back on his heels, and was in defense, almost scolding the audience. In defense, but then trying to ease up and be casual. Yeah. He didn't know where to find his footing again. And frankly, the most important thing in this day and age, he's old enough to know better. Consent is never a joking matter, whether it's regarding females, males, and children. And the fact that he keeps using it as a stand-up bit to get laughs and applauses with a room full of men at retired union conferences. He has been disingenuous and misleading on Medicare for All. He actually, at an AARP conference, had stated that it would destroy Obamacare and that there would be an absolute lie he was telling at an AARP conference.
Well, Medicare for All would destroy Obamacare, Dinah. It would replace it.
I know. Well, it would actually improve on it, but people who aren't educated in the actual policy and the implementation of it, it's...
They think that means their health insurance is going to go away.
But he has a 40-year track record, and he knows better to, speak not crystal clear. And one more second, he also was vice president for 8 years, so he has about 50 years' experience. It is no one's fault but himself that he's not prepared and doesn't know how to express his points. And frankly, from day one when he announced that he was running, he should have not just had a 5-point plan, a 10-point plan, a 20-point plan. He has a 50-year horrendous track record.
Well, Joe's done a lot of good things, but he hasn't yet really taken on his support for the Iraq War. He hasn't taken on his authorship of the student debt bill.
But if we compare that to Senator Bernie Sanders, who has fought for labor rights,
or
union
Elizabeth
rights,
Warren,
or
rights. Kamala Harris, or Cory Booker, or Julian Castro. I mean, there's some very, very good candidates out there. Dinah, thank you for the call. Again, on the one hand, I don't want to turn this whole conversation into, oh my God, what's going on with Joe? But I think that what has happened is that because he was vice president for 8 years and just basically read speeches off teleprompters and things and was a nice guy. I mean, I've met Joe Biden. And Louise and I both have met Joe Biden. I mean, we've talked to him. I shook his hand. I mean, it wasn't, it was a 4-sentence conversation, but we were at a small dinner in Washington D.C. There was, I don't know, maybe 50 people there, And Joe was there, and he gave a talk, and then he came around and walked around to the tables and talked to everybody and shook everybody's hand. And as he was shaking my right hand with his right hand, he's got his left hand on my shoulder, kind of hugging me. I mean, that's Joe. He's kind of, like that. And he's very likable. He's a very nice guy. But I think that because he was vice president, we've forgotten what a frankly ineffective candidate he was the 3 times, I believe it was 3 times, perhaps 2 for sure, but the 2 or 3 times that he ran for president before when he didn't make it past the primaries. And what I'm seeing is the same thing echoing through, and it concerns me that I want us to have the strongest possible candidate. And I can give you the negatives of everybody, right? Bernie will be tarred as a socialist, and that actually is a negative. That's a danger for the Democratic Party if Bernie is the nominee. That's going to be the danger. Elizabeth Warren is she's going to face the challenge that every woman faces, which is, and I was seeing this on Twitter last night from men who were saying, "Oh, she's all screechy." That's a terrible sexist, misogynistic hit. But she's going to face that, and frankly, I think she needs to dial back a little bit on the super friendly with the audience, as I said. But Kamala Harris is going to take a hit on her criminal justice stuff, on her time as a prosecutor. Every single one of these people has negatives, and you don't need me to tell you this. You're going to hear it from the Republicans over and over and over again, whoever the nominee is. But let's reframe this conversation. Who do you think would be the strongest candidate going forward? We'll be back. It's 44 minutes. Coming up on 45 minutes past the hour.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
We're gonna check in with Victoria Jones in a few minutes and just get her take on what happened in the UK as well. So stick around. And welcome back, Jay. Oh, hang on, Jay. I'm sorry. You are listening to WCPT, which is in a break right now. Whoop! I think I just dropped Jay. Jay, call right back. I'm sorry. That was my fault. Ingrid in Lebanon, Pennsylvania, watching us on Free Speech TV. Hey, Ingrid, what's up?
Yes. Hello, Tom.
Hi, Ingrid.
Yes. Hello, Tom. I saw all of it except for the last 3. And I was very impressed, like I knew I would be, with Elizabeth and Bernie and Kamala. I really think she drove home the leadership issue, which was great to emphasize that. Mm-hmm. And Joe, I feel basically sorry for him, but I wasn't for him before this town hall last night. I really think Elizabeth has such a grasp of the issues that I could see her. I think she'd be great against Trump. I know what the negatives can be, but like you said, everybody has negatives.
Yeah. So, I agree. I think Elizabeth Warren, I think Bernie Sanders, I think Kamala Harris, I think Pete Buttigieg, I think Cory Booker. I think any of them could make mincemeat out of Donald Trump. Julian Castro, I think, could take him apart. Although I think that frankly, we're seeing this kind of crowd wisdom thing, and I think that there's something to it. The people who are polling, above 3%, which is basically, so far, is Biden, Sanders, Warren, and Harris. Those 4 are all strong candidates, but I am concerned about Joe Biden. It just flipped me out. Anyhow, Ingrid, thank you for the call. It's great to hear from you. Brian in Sequim, Washington? Is there a town called Sequim?
Yes.
Hey, I didn't know that.
Yes, there is.
So what's up?
It means a good place to hunt in Sklallam.
Oh, okay.
Good morning, Tom, and thanks for keeping it real. I don't want to disrupt the thread, but going back for a moment to look at Donald Trump's misappropriation justified a bogus emergency to fund this wall. We're talking money, and I'm glad that you broke it down into dollars that each state will basically be sacrificing or contributing, so to speak. Let's look at the actual impact this is going to have on those who are serving in the military. Across this country, we have hundreds of old bases with substandard housing. And I've seen this story several times on different newscasts. We have soldiers' families living with mold and cockroaches. They're actually having to move out and spend their own money to provide decent housing for their families.
Yes.
And now the military itself, they're walking away from their very own people. We have soldiers who are on the lower echelons of the rankings that have to use food stamps. They can't afford to feed their families. So when we think and talk about this money situation, let's remember its actual impact on those who are serving to protect our country.
Yeah, Trump is essentially stealing $3 billion from our military. And a good chunk of that is being taken literally right out of the people who are serving, the enlisted people.
And it's funny, it's ironic that the Republicans have always claimed to support the military, strongest defenders of the military, right. And yet look at what they're doing.
No, they have never supported the military. They just support wars and defense contractors and pretend that they're supporting the military. Spot on, Brian. Thanks a lot for the call. We'll be right back. It's 49 minutes past the hour. We're going to check in with Victoria Jones, find out what's going on in the UK, and then I'll be getting back to your calls. I think we've got a guest here in the second hour, too. Yeah, Elaine Parker's going to be with us. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. The chief Washington analyst for the D.C. radio company is Victoria Jones. Victoria Jones D.C. is her Twitter handle. And I just wanted to do a quick check-in with her on what happened over the last 48 hours in the U.K. We're not seeing so much politicians, Republicans in the United States, desert Donald Trump. A couple did early on, specifically Bob Corker and Jeff Flake, and they got taken down for it. And now you got Justin Amash in Michigan who confronted Trump, and he's being taken down for it. But nothing like what we saw in the UK. And I think this is because in the UK it's a lot harder to buy a politician. But I'd love to get Victoria's take on this. Victoria Jones. Hey, Victoria, what's up?
Well, hey, Tom. Just going off topic for a moment, if I can go totally off topic. A Norwegian scientist claims that the Loch Ness Monster is probably a giant eel. Just thought everybody should know that.
Okay, thank you.
I disagree. Having searched for Nessie myself when I was 15, I believe it's a monster.
Okay.
But speaking of monsters, she said, with a brilliant segue, that would be the House of Commons currently.
Right.
Well, the purge of 21 Conservative MPs was just astonishing, including the grandson of Winston Churchill, who, this is quite astonishing. A number of these people are former ministers.
Did I get it also that Boris Johnson's brother got bounced?
No. Today, he resigned. He resigned. Joe Johnson, he resigned, citing differences, I think both over Brexit and family tensions. They don't have Thanksgiving, but if they did, it would be one of those things where you'd be throwing the bread rolls, basically. But he resigned today. So not only does Boris Johnson have a 100% record loss of votes in the House of Commons, he's now lost his brother's support.
Amazing. So what does this mean? What does this mean with regard to Brexit? What does this mean with regard to the future of the Boris Johnson prime ministership, if that's the right word? And what does this mean for the UK, for the average British citizen going forward? And what might that mean for American and European relations with the UK?
Johnson met today with Vice President Mike Pence, who assured him of President Trump's support, so I should just mention that, and that things would be great under a UK-US trade deal. Well, what it means is that Boris Johnson intends to bring the same bill before Parliament on Monday that he brought earlier this week for a general election on October the 15th. So he hasn't given up. Now, is he going to get away with this? It's not clear that he will. because the Speaker of the House of Commons has before said that you can't do this. He's previously objected to the same motion being put forward twice. But we don't know, maybe he'll get away with it. But will Labour support an early election? That's the big question. And the Labour ranks are divided on this. This is one of the big things coming up.
Does that have to do with Corbyn, or does that have to do with fear that the Conservatives will consolidate? Okay, go ahead. How so?
Well, fear that Conservatives could consolidate it. Well, a lot of it, and also Tories, Conservatives, fear that they don't trust Boris Johnson on this bill that he was defeated on, that he would not turn around and bring back a no-deal Brexit if he won an election. They don't trust. Nobody trusts him not to turn around and do that. There are Labour MPs in the ranks who want an election after October the 31st, the date for leaving the EU, and those who want an early one. A major union leader has stated, the head of the Trade Union Congress has said they should have an early election.
Right. Now, and if I can interrupt real quickly, Victoria, because I think a lot of Americans are hearing this through, understanding this through an American political lens.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, Boris Johnson, nobody in the United Kingdom ever votes for Boris Johnson. They, correct me if I'm wrong on this, they vote for their member of parliament. And then whichever party controls the majority or can create a coalition to control the majority appoints the prime minister. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay,
yes.
so it's not that Boris Johnson is running for re-election. It's that literally everybody in the House of Commons is running for re-election. And if Boris Johnson loses, it means a whole bunch of guys, men and women in the presumably in the Tories in the Conservative Party, lost their seats, right?
Yes, a lot of people could lose their seats. He's banking on the fact that he thinks he's got support in the country because of this total debacle, that he could increase the number of Conservatives. Don't forget that earlier this week, one Conservative walked across the House of Commons to the other side, meaning that Johnson no longer has a working majority of one. And then, of course, he booted out 21 Conservatives, so he has no majority. But in Scotland, the Scottish National Party believes that Conservatives will see massive losses if there's a general election.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
What does that have to? What's driving that in Scotland?
Well, Scotland is against leave. Scotland is in favour of staying in the European Union.
So even if they're Conservatives, even if they're Tories, even if they're anti-Labour in Scotland, they're still anti-Brexit.
They are, that's correct.
Right.
Yeah, and they're sick and tired of this. So it's very complicated. This bill earlier this week has now gone to the House of Lords, which will pass it. It will come back to the House of Commons. So they want to get all this done by Monday. And don't forget that Boris Johnson is suspending Parliament for a number of weeks. So there's a lot they've got to get done. But at this point, anything could happen. He gave a speech today. It was rather rambly, which is interesting because he's a bright guy, but he's unprepared. He's unprepared. He was an hour late. So the fact that he was an hour late and he was unprepared tells you that things are not going well for him. And he's got this advisor who is considered toxic, and he's taking his advice, and he's being warned by people, get rid of this guy, he's giving you bad advice.
So is this guy like his Steve Bannon or Stephen Miller?
A sort of combo of them, but somebody who is a little different, but somebody who is really all about the theatrics.
Very interesting. Victoria Jones with the DC Radio Company, the chief Washington analyst. Victoria, thank you so much for dropping by today.
Thank you.
I really appreciate the insight and all that you bring to these things, and I'm grateful to you for it. We'll be right back. Stick around. It's the Thom Hartmann Program. We're going to be talking with somebody from the Job Creators Group.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
every day here on the Thom Hartmann Program, Louise and I and our team, Sean, Nate, Shira, Dave, Chase, Sue, Nigel, Ron, we all work to put together the very, very best show we possibly can. And there's an enormous amount of work that goes into the show. And one of the things that comes out of that is a lot of content, a lot of specific information that we go through and we dig out and, we want to share with you. And Sue puts that into our newsletter every week. And I think you will, if you don't already receive our newsletter, it comes in email every day, about an hour after we're off the air, or maybe a couple hours after we're off the air. And Sue goes through and pulls literally every link to every story that we talked about and puts it into the newsletter. It's free. We don't sell a list or anything. You complete safety and security. There's no charge. There's no nothing. Just, plug in your email address over at thomhartmann.com. And you get signed up for the newsletter. It's all fairly obvious. You'll see it on the website. So check it out, thomhartmann.com. Thank you. Well, it's the fall, so it's time for the Free Speech TV Fund Drive. And here we are asking for your help once again. One of the wonderful things about Free Speech TV and a lot of independent and nonprofit media is that you don't have to put up with commercials. People who listen to my radio show on the commercial side, it gets interrupted constantly. During those interruptions that people listening to commercial radio, they're hearing commercials. I'm still taking calls and talking to you. It's one of the things that we do for Free Speech TV, that we've always done for Free Speech TV. It makes a substantially more difficult day for me, including bathroom breaks. But it's the right thing, right? It's the right thing to do, is to put together an actual hour show that you can watch for a whole hour, including the book reports and everything else, rather than taking 4 breaks an hour and throwing old content and crap like that in there. So we're really dancing our hearts out for Free Speech TV and for you. And we would appreciate your help here with Free Speech TV. So your contribution today, your one-time contributions, a portion of those go to support our program as well. So if you make one-time contributions of $20, $50, $100, $150, $250, or $1,000, that's great. That's really helpful to us, and it's really helpful to Free Speech TV. So please consider calling now and making your contribution. The number is 877-378-8669, as I recall. Is that right, Nate? It's not written down on this email. 877-378-8669. With a $20 gift, you get a 3x5-inch all-weather sticker, which is basically a picture of me, and it says the Thom Hartmann Program. With a $50 gift, you get a Change the Channel Free Speech TV tote bag. With a $100 gift, you get a Free Speech TV any functional adult long sleeve shirt. And the sizes vary from small to XXX large. With a $150 gift, you get my new book, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America. Now, this book is not yet shipping, but we got our copies last week, and so I'm assuming Free Speech TV is going to be getting theirs in the next week or two. So, and I'll be signing book plates, and we'll put them in the books, so you'll have an autographed copy of this book, and we'll get those off to you. That's with a $150 one-time contribution. With a $250 one-time contribution, you can participate in a virtual meet and greet. That is an off-the-record conversation where we just all meet on Zoom or Skype or however. I think we're using Zoom now to do this. You just pop in, you'll get an invitation link in email, and it'll say, click here, and it'll pop open a window, and I won't be able to see you because there's going to be a whole bunch of us, but you'll be able to see me, and I'll be able to hear you. And, you can ask any question you want, and I'll do my very best to give you just a straight up answer. And, we can have conversation as a group and individually, within the context of the group on that. Just like when people come here for our actual meet and greets, our physical meet and greets, we hang out in the studio for the last hour of the show, and then we walk down the street to a restaurant and have a nice lunch together. We can do that with this virtual meet and greet, this $250 one-time contribution virtual meet and greet. But you don't have to go anywhere. if you don't live in this neighborhood, if you don't live near Portland, Oregon, you don't have to buy an airplane ticket or anything else. Now, on the other hand, if you would like to come see Portland, and I got to tell you, particularly if you're interested in Meatless Mondays, if you're interested in trying to go for, a little less meat in your diet, although people come for our meet and greets and they can order anything they want on the menu, and I'm not going to pick on you, don't worry. But Portland, this just blows my mind. There's this app called Happy Cow that just shows vegan restaurants wherever you are. It's kind of like Open Table or something like that, one of these apps. And Portland's got like 20 or 30 vegan restaurants. It's just incredible. And hundreds of, probably over 100 restaurants that heavily lean toward vegetarian. And when I was in New York, I pulled up this app, and there weren't as many restaurants as there are in Portland. It's just an incredible food town. So if you are into food, come to our meet and greet. Now, we're just going to get a nice meal at a nice restaurant that anybody can get anything that they want at. But if you're thinking about coming and seeing Portland with a $1,000 contribution, you can spend an hour here with us in the last hour of the show in the studio, and then we'll have lunch together, and that'll all be nice. But mostly, let's support Free Speech TV. Your one-time contributions are really appreciated. Please call now, 877-378-8669. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number for Free Speech TV. And of course, you can also donate online at freespeech.org. And if you donate during the time that our show is on the air, then we get credit for that as well. So please give us a shout now, right? 877-378-8669. Thanks so much.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Sunstein.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And we've been talking about the Democratic primary and in particular Joe Biden's performance last night, although we'll get to all of that in just a minute. We'll get back to that. But first, Elaine Parker's on the line with us. She is the president of the Job Creators Network Foundation. JCNF.org is the website. You can tweet her at Elaine JCN, and the network generically you can tweet at Job Creators USA. Elaine, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Tom. It's great to be back.
Thanks for coming back. Now, you have this op-ed where you're saying that the record number of Americans participating in the labor force, this is all thanks to Donald Trump, and this white-hot labor market is threatened by far-left Democratic ideas. Do I have that right? You want to elaborate on that?
Sure. Happy Labor Day weekend, because that's when the op-ed ran.
Yep.
We look at some of the policies that have been pushed and promoted by the Trump administration, namely the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And, because of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, we have seen more people have more money in their pockets and be able to spend it. We have consumer confidence at sky high levels. We have generational low unemployment. We have more jobs available than people to fill them. We have in every demographic across the board, from women, men, Hispanics, Asians, veterans, the disabled, even felons at the lowest unemployment records we've seen. And we continue to see that. We even have ADP numbers that came out today. They say they got 195,000 payroll positions created, which has exceeded expectations of only 149,000. So that would lead us to believe that tomorrow's numbers are going to be pretty good for this economy.
So if you think this is because of the tax cut, I would say the same thing I said back when Reagan tried this, which is, give me $1.5 trillion on a credit card, and I can show you what it looks like to live large. I mean, this seems like a non-argument. At the same time, our CEOs, our U.S. CEO compensation right now, the median salary for CEOs is between 400 and 500 times the average worker. In the UK, it's 22 times. In France, it's 15 times. In Germany, it's 12 times. The top 1% right now owns 41.8% of the financial wealth of America. The bottom 60%, the rest of us basically, own 1.7%. We have a 29% poverty rate in the United States. In democratic socialist Norway, it's 10%. Our life expectancy is only 79 years. In Norway, it's almost 82 years. Our infant mortality rate is almost 6%. In Norway, it's only 2%. I mean, I could go on. We have 63% home ownership. Norway has 84%. The living wage in Norway is actually, or the minimum wage is actually a living wage. Here, the minimum wage is a poverty wage. You talk about all these jobs that are being created. The vast majority, in fact, the piece I saw in the Financial Times about 3 weeks ago suggested that virtually all the jobs that have been created at least over the last 6 years, which includes the Obama expansion, have been temp jobs or what are considered, there's a word for it. The word isn't dangerous, but at-risk jobs, essentially, because there's no job security, there's no benefits, and they're at-will jobs. How can you say that this kind of right-wing neoliberal policies that were instituted by Reagan when we rejected Keynesian economics in 1981 and adopted Milton Friedman's neoliberal economics, and this has, by the way, been continued under the administrations of Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, as well as all these Republican presidents, how can you say that that's been good for any workers? Workers right now are making, less money now than they were making in 1980 when Ronald Reagan was elected.
Tom, actually, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, if you want to talk about wage growth under this administration, we've seen faster wage growth under this administration than we have in a decade. And as a matter of fact, the Bureau of Labor Statistics recently came out and adjusted the wage growth for 2018, that wages grew by 5.6%. That is quicker than that's
substantial, and that's what you expect when you have an expanding economy. All right, make your point.
Tom, let me finish my point. And rose 50% faster than under President Obama. And for the bottom 10% of wage earners, that growth was at 6.5% for last year. And let me correct one thing. Norway and Sweden are not socialistic economies. They are free market economies.
They are democratic socialist countries. They call themselves that.
They are free market economies, and in fact, the leaders of those economies came out and had to correct Bernie Sanders at the time when he was running.
Would you endorse? First of all, let's finish this thing about wages. My point is that yes, of course, when you're on a sugar high, when you've been goosing your economy, when you put $1.5 trillion on the credit card, and I remember the days when conservatives used to complain about that. Now you guys appear to be celebrating that. I'm guessing when a Democratic president comes into office, you'll go back to complaining about it, right? But when you're on a sugar high, the job market's tighten up. There's more competition for workers, and that raises wages, no doubt about that. But the economy has been essentially reconfigured. When Reagan came into office, almost a third of our workers had unions. Now it's 6% in the public workforce, or in the non-public workforce, in the private workforce. As a consequence of that, the vast majority of these jobs have no job security. These are crappy jobs, a lot of them. I mean, certainly there's some good jobs being created, but you can't just throw these numbers out and say, the average American knows that they're getting the short end of the stick. They're getting screwed by these neoliberal policies, this trickle-down Reaganism that Trump is tripling down on. And now we've got a $21 trillion debt. What are you going to do about that?
Tom, the reality is, because of the tax cuts, we actually have more money going into the Treasury than we had prior to that. We don't have a revenue problem into the Treasury. We have a spending problem.
Then why do we have it? Oh, okay. So where do you want to cut the spending? Do we cut Medicare? Do away with that?
So our seniors pay into Medicare their whole life. Okay, their whole life. Social Security, I'm paying into it. I hope it's there when I get there. Unfortunately, it may not be.
But the Republican Party has always worked to make sure that it's not there. Is the Job Creators Network in favor of strengthening Medicare
both parties,
or doing away with it?
Both parties have hurt our Medicare and our Social Security system, and both parties.
But the Republican Party has specifically called it socialism. Ronald Reagan recorded an album about this, called it socialism, and warned us that, George W. Bush tried to privatize Social Security after 2005. He said, this is the political capital I got from winning. He went on a 20-city tour trying to sell the idea of turning the entire Social Security program over to J.P. Morgan, Chase, and Wells Fargo, moving it all to the banks. He had to back off because people were horrified by this. But I think pretty much everybody gets it, Elaine, that these are the economic policies you're promoting. I think it's, frankly, it's an honorable tradition. If you want to invoke Edmund Burke or Russell Kirk or Barry Goldwater, I understand those positions. There's an intellectual honesty to those positions. What I don't get is why conservatives and people like yourself from these think tanks like the Job Creators Network Foundation don't own them. Why in the back rooms you guys are pushing really, really hard to do everything you can to damage Social Security and Medicare or privatize them. You would say that that's not damaging them, I'm assuming. And yet in public it's like, oh no, we love Medicare. And by the way, the Democrats have heard it too. I don't think anybody buys that.
Yes, Democrats have heard it. Tom, even the New York Times, the liberal New York Times.
I'm not talking about the New York Times. I'm talking about the Job Creators Network positions.
I'm talking about the economic policy of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act on whether or not people are keeping more of their own hard-earned money, and they are. Their headline was, "Face it, you probably got a tax cut." They had to admit that normal, everyday Americans did in fact get a tax cut. They are keeping more of their own money, and they're spending their money the way they see fit.
And you know what happens over time, Elaine, when people get tax cuts? When working people get tax cuts, you know what happens over time?
They get to keep more of their own hard-earned money.
Right, and their wages go down.
Well, wages are showing exactly the opposite.
Look back at the history of this, Elaine. Seriously, honest to God, go back and look at this, and you're welcome to come back on the program. Go back over 50 years or 60 years. What you see, and I'm not talking about tax cuts for rich people. I'm talking about tax cuts for working people. Employers know how much money people take home at the end of the day. And the labor market, the market for labor employment, is an after-tax market. It's not a pre-tax market. So if employers know that if they're paying somebody $30,000 a year and that person is taking home $25,000 a year, that those workers can live on $25,000 a year, or at least are willing to work for $25,000 a year. So if that person gets a tax cut and suddenly they're making $30,000 a year, or they're taking home 30 instead of 25, over the next 5 years, and you'll see this in typically 3 to 5 years periods, when there's a tax reduction on working people, over the next 3 to 5 years, their wages go down because the labor market readjusts itself. On the other hand, when taxes on working people go up, and you can see this going all the way back to 1913, when taxes on working people go up, the labor market compensates for that by raising wages. That's why wages went up dramatically in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s as taxes were going up on everybody. Reagan started cutting taxes on working people. And yes, you're right. The majority of it went to rich people, but Reagan's tax cuts, Bush tax cuts, Trump's tax cuts, they all cut taxes on working people. And what happens is over the next 3 to 5 years, the labor market adjusts and says, oh, well, these people have more money in their pockets, so we can cut back on their wages, or at least not give them any more raises.
I've actually never heard anything explained that way before.
Well, I encourage you to read John Maynard Keynes.
I consider myself fairly well read. But what I can tell you is that the Job Creators Network represents small businesses, and we call them Main Street small businesses. And they are telling us regularly that they can't find people to fill the jobs. And as a result, they are raising wages, and they are
Yes, this is what happens in a tight labor market. Sure.
I have a woman who owns a manufacturing plant in a manufacturing company in northern Illinois. Okay, she employs about 30 people. She can't find people. And as a result, she's paying higher wages. As a result of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, she gave everybody a raise. She gave everybody a bonus. And here's the kicker. She's paying 100% of their health insurance premium.
That's wonderful, Elaine. We have 15 seconds left. What are you going to do when it comes time to pay back that $1.5 trillion that produced this little bubble?
Look, our politicians are going to have to make some decisions. And we don't have a revenue problem. This tax cut has produced tremendous revenue into the Treasury.
So we're spending too much money.
We need to take a look at how we're spending it. Absolutely.
Right. So we need to cut back on food stamps?
Can we agree?
Trump just said we need to cut on food stamps, right? No, I don't agree on that. I don't think that we have a spending problem at all. I think that we have a revenue problem.
Spending problem at all.
No, I don't. But we'll have to leave it there.
All right, we'll have to agree to disagree.
Yes. Elaine Parker, the president of the Job Creators Network Foundation, jcnf.org, Job Creators USA, or Elaine JCN on Twitter. Elaine, thanks for dropping by.
Thanks, Tom.
Good talking with you. We'll be back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
18 minutes past the hour. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Wow. What a day, huh? Mark in Columbia, Missouri. Hey, Mark, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Great info, and I know you don't want to admit it, but you just sliced her to ribbons.
Well, we'll see. I mean, her understanding of economics is different from my understanding of economics. So it sounded to her like I was speaking in gibberish. But the whole thing about tax cuts, that's why wages for working people have only gone up 11% since 1980, whereas wages for CEOs have gone up 940%. It's real simple. The CEOs are not working in a labor market where there are market forces and everybody else is. But anyhow, back to you, Mark.
That was my comment, and okay, to my question. Mm-hmm. You mentioned Amy Klobuchar.
Yeah.
As maybe the only other centrist, and
well, I think Kamala Harris might too. I think if Joe Biden pulls out of the race or starts losing badly, I think it opens a space for both Klobuchar and Harris. Forgive my interruption, Mark.
If I don't want to vote for oil money, so if they're taking oil money, I do not want to vote for them.
Well, Joe Biden has said that he will not take money from fossil fuel executives, and we'll see if he holds this fundraiser tonight. But I think up to this point they've been trying to be true to that. I'm frankly concerned that they're taking money from banking executives and insurance, and et cetera, et cetera. But whatever.
Do you think that we'll end up voting for a centrist?
I think that if the Democratic Party nominates a centrist for president, that it's going to end badly. I really do.
Okay. I'll keep that in mind. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot for the call, Mark. Good talking with you. John in Seattle. Hey, John, what's up?
Yeah, I'm watched a debate on climate change last night, and I think that there's going to be three candidates, and that's going to be Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, and Joe Biden. That's how it's going to go, and that's my feeling. But the demeanor of Bernie Sanders, I've watched him on the late night shows as well as all his debates, and he gets better and better and better every time I see him. He'll be on Seth Meyers tonight, and I'm looking forward to that. But last night, he was so cool in the way that he explained how he'd like to deal with climate change, which is to go around this planet Earth and get all the leaders together and bring up like a format and bring them together and then work together on dealing with getting rid of this the bombs and the bullets and the guns.
Yeah.
And warfare and work on the climate change. He had such a mature way of explaining how to deal with it. And he also deals with Palestine. I've seen him live on Free Speech where he's in his office, talking. Mm-hmm. So he does a good job of
Bernie is a solid candidate.
Palestinians.
There's absolutely no doubt about that. Bernie is a very good candidate, and he was on this show for 11 years, every single Friday, for a whole hour, taking calls from our listeners. I love Bernie Sanders, personally and politically, and I think he'd make a great president. But I think we've got good candidate. We have other good candidates too. We'll be right back. Every day here on the Thom Hartmann Program, Louise and I and our team, Sean, Nate, Shira, Dave, Chase, Sue, Nigel, Ron, we all work to put together the very, very best show we possibly can. And there's an enormous amount of work that goes into the show. And one of the things that comes out of that is a lot of content, a lot of specific information that we go through and we dig out and, we want to share with you. And Sue puts that into our newsletter every week. And I think you will, if you don't already receive our newsletter, it comes in email every day, about an hour after we're off the air, or maybe a couple hours after we're off the air. And Sue goes through and pulls literally every link to every story that we talked about and puts it into the newsletter. It's free. We don't sell the list or anything. You complete safety and security. There's no charge. There's no nothing. Just, plug in your email address over at thomhartmann.com and you get signed up for the newsletter. It's all fairly obvious. You'll see it on the website. So check it out, thomhartmann.com. Thank you. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And just to put some frosting on that cake of the conversation that I just had with Elaine Parker. And I was rather surprised when she said she had never heard my explanation for why tax cuts for working people actually depress wages, tax increases on working people actually raise wages. Working people are in a labor marketplace. And, it's just, there's no denying it. I mean, she was making that point just a minute earlier where she said, there's more jobs and therefore there's employers are competing for employees and therefore wages are going up over this short period of time, this relatively short period of time. It's been going on actually for about 8 or 9 years, slowly, but, surely. That's the labor marketplace. So then the question becomes, well, why is it the CEOs are making, millions of dollars a year, whereas they used to make hundreds of thousands? Why is it that CEO pay has gone up over 900% since Reagan started this whole thing in 1981, whereas worker pay has only gone up 11%? And the answer is really simple. CEOs don't exist in a labor marketplace. There's not that much competition for CEO jobs. Yeah, there's a lot of people who'd love to be CEOs, but you've got to have several different things in order to be a CEO. You've got to have the ability and willingness to destroy people's lives and destroy communities. You've got to be at a certain level functionally a sociopath in order to be a CEO in most companies. Not all companies, but in most companies, in most large companies. I think it was Teddy Roosevelt said there's never been a large enterprise without a large crime, or a large fortune without a large crime behind it. So number one, there's a very limited number of people who are functionally sociopaths, people who could just lay off 5,000 people and destroy their lives and actually profit from it and think that's a good thing. Or who could be, like the CEO of a health insurance company and try to figure out ways to screw people. Or CEO of a bank and figure out ways to try to take more money out of people's checking accounts. I mean, all these things, right? So there's a small market of sociopaths and, who also have college degrees, who also have experience in the business world, and who also know how to run a company. So CEOs have been able to write their own ticket. Taxes don't affect CEOs. Or the compensation. Or actually, maybe they do, and the reason why the top tax rate has gone from 74% down to in the 30s now is one of the reasons why CEOs are taking so much money. But still, they don't have that competition in the labor marketplace that working people have. I was just astonished that she had never heard that. It should be so obvious. Anyhow, we'll be back. It's 27 minutes past the hour. Pick up your calls, your thoughts on the climate debate last night, or the climate town hall. CNN had this climate town hall. It was absolutely fascinating, and I was frankly really impressed by a number of people and really shocked by Joe Biden. We'll be back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
I think at the very least, Joe Biden was massively over-prepped and couldn't hold all that stuff in his head, and it was real unfortunate. We'll be back. Well, it's the fall, so it's time for the Free Speech TV Fund Drive, and here we are. Asking for your help once again. One of the wonderful things about Free Speech TV and a lot of independent and nonprofit media is that you don't have to put up with commercials. People who listen to my radio show on the commercial side, it gets interrupted constantly. During those interruptions that people listening to commercial radio, they're hearing commercials. I'm still taking calls and talking to you. It's one of the things that we do for Free Speech TV, that we've always done for Free Speech TV. It makes a substantially more difficult day for me, including bathroom breaks. But it's the right thing, right? It's the right thing to do, is to put together an actual hour show that you can watch for a whole hour, with including the book reports and everything else, rather than taking 4 breaks an hour and throwing old content and crap like that in there. So we're really dancing our hearts out for Free Speech TV and for you. And we would appreciate your help here with Free Speech TV. So your contribution today, your one-time contributions, a portion of those go to support our program as well. So if you make one-time contributions of $20, $50, $100, $150, $250, or $1,000, that's great. That's really helpful to us, and it's really helpful to Free Speech TV. So please consider calling now and making your contribution. The number is 877-378-8669, as I recall. Is that right, Nate? It's not written down on this email. 877-378-8669. With a $20 gift, you get a 3x5-inch all-weather sticker, which is basically a picture of me, and it says the Thom Hartmann Program. With a $50 gift, you get a Change the Channel Free Speech TV tote bag. With a $100 gift, you get a Free Speech TV any functional adult long sleeve shirt, and the sizes vary from small to XXX large. With a $150 gift, you get my new book, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America. Now, this book is not yet shipping, but we got our copies last week, and so I'm assuming Free Speech TV is going to be getting theirs in the next week or two. So, and I'll be signing book plates, and we'll put them in the books, so you'll have an autographed copy of this book, and we'll get those off to you. That's with a $150 one-time contribution. With a $250 one-time contribution, you can participate in a virtual meet and greet. That is an off-the-record conversation where we just all meet on Zoom or Skype or however. I think we're using Zoom now to do this. You just pop in, you'll get an invitation link in email, and it'll say, click here, and it'll pop open a window, and I won't be able to see you because there's going to be a whole bunch of us, but you'll be able to see me, and I'll be able to hear you. And, you can ask any question you want, and I'll do my very best to give you just a straight up answer. And, we can have conversation as a group and individually, within the context of the group on that. Just like when people come here for our actual meet and greets, our physical meet and greets, we hang out in the studio for the last hour of the show, and then we walk down the street to a restaurant and have a nice lunch together. We can do that with this virtual meet and greet, this $250 one-time contribution virtual meet and greet. But you don't have to go anywhere. If you don't live in this neighborhood, if you don't live near Portland, Oregon, you don't have to buy an airplane ticket or anything else. Now, on the other hand, if you would like to come see Portland, and I got to tell you, particularly if you're interested in Meatless Mondays, if you're interested in trying to go for, a little less meat in your diet, although people come for our meet and greets, and they can order anything they want on the menu, and I'm not going to pick on you, don't worry. But Portland, this just blows my mind. There's this app called Happy Cow that just shows vegan restaurants wherever you are. It's kind of like Open Table or something like that, one of these apps. And Portland's got like 20 or 30 vegan restaurants. It's just incredible. And hundreds of, probably over 100 restaurants that heavily lean toward vegetarian. And when I was in New York, I pulled up this app, and there weren't as many restaurants as there are in Portland. It's just an incredible food town. So if you are into food, come to our meet and greet. Now, we're just going to get, a nice meal at a nice restaurant. that anybody can get anything that they want at. But if you're thinking about coming and seeing Portland with a $1,000 contribution, you can spend an hour here with us in the last hour of the show in the studio, and then we'll have lunch together, and that'll all be nice. But mostly, let's support Free Speech TV. Your one-time contributions are really appreciated. Please call now, 877-378-8669. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number for Free Speech TV. And of course, you can also donate online at freespeech.org. And if you donate during the time that our show is on the air, then we get credit for that as well. So please give us a shout now, right? 877-378-8669. Thanks so much.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, 34 minutes past the hour. And, let's pick up some of your phone calls here. Rob in Mesa, Arizona. Hey, Rob, what's on your mind today?
Hey, I just wanted to point out that your last caller, your last guest, pointed out a few problems with the whole relationship between small businesses and healthcare industry. Basically, I've always said that, the reason why employers offer healthcare is because insurance companies like to privatize the profit and socialize the losses, meaning if you're healthy enough to work, you're healthy enough to insure. And the other thing she kind of bragged about, and the thing that I've been always complaining about, is like, if you want to help a small business, make it so no business can offer health insurance.
Right.
Because when she was
make it Medicare for all.
That, yeah, exactly. That would be the ultimate answer. But prior to that, I would say that when you brag about paying 100% of your insurance, well, basically what you're doing is taking that $1,000, $500 a month, and taking it out of your salary. So you're no longer getting paid for that. Instead of paying you that wage and letting you go out and shop for it, which would be an open market thing, they're taking it. And then the second side of that is not only are they taking that medical deduction, they're taking that medical deduction away from you because now they're paying it,
right?
And you don't get.
But here's the one problem with that, Rob. Under the existing laws. And I think we probably agree that the whole existing system needs to just be blown up. Well, that sounds too strong, but you know what I mean. We need Medicare for all, basically, bottom line. No, but the problem with that right now is that as an employer, I pay my employees health insurance. I pay for that. And our little company, we are a small company, our little company can deduct that so it becomes tax deductible, a tax deductible expense. We don't pay an income tax on that. But if I simply said to Sean and Nate, and said, here's your health insurance money, and they went out in the marketplace and bought their own health insurance, they would have to pay income tax on that money. And and that's how the tax law has been skewed to push employer-provided health insurance rather than individual-provided health insurance. Or that's one of many ways.
Right, and that's kind of my main point, that the insurance company knows that they want to profitize. Right. They just want to basically insure healthy people. But
absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Rob. Good to hear from you. Karen in Alamogordo, New Mexico. Hey, Karen, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. I just wanted to weigh in on Biden. I watched his debate. I mean, his I guess it was a town hall yesterday. And, I'm not a fan of Biden to begin with. He's not my first choice for sure for the candidate. But I really it's like every time I watch him, I feel like he's all over the place. And I don't feel like his heart's really in it. And I feel like, I look at him and I think he's still really sad about all the loss in his life. And he doesn't seem to have passion for doing this. He's doing it out of some sense of
I think it's a sense of duty. I think that Joe Biden, he said that it was after Charlottesville that he decided he was going to get into the race. I think that Joe Biden, deep down inside, and his wife and the people around him, they all believe, and I believe that they're right on this, that Donald Trump is an existential threat, not just to American democracy and not just to the American political system and our nation as a whole, but literally to the entire planet. that he could start a war, particularly with Iran, and that could spiral into World War III. And if that becomes nuclear, it could literally sterilize the planet. Nuclear winter. And Joe Biden is looking at that, thinking, okay, at the point that he decided to jump into the race, I think that he was thinking none of these candidates are going to be strong enough to take on Trump. I'm consistently polling really, really high, so I have an obligation to save my country. I really think that that's the thinking that happened. But what's happening now is that that polling that prompted him to jump into the race, that caused him to jump into the race, that polling wasn't really measuring who would you vote for, who would you campaign for, who would you dance your heart out for, who are the millennials going to show up and vote for when they didn't show up and vote for Hillary, who are the, it wasn't measuring any of those things. It was only measuring name recognition. And when you've been vice president of the United States for 8 years, your name recognition is through the roof. So, of course, he was polling really high. And I think now that he's actually in a competitive race, he's going to continue to decline. This is just my sense of it, and I'm seeing it. And I'm particularly seeing it in the progressive polls, like Daily Kos has, where he's basically collapsed. And when I watched the climate debate last night, I could see why. When you compare his performance with that of literally any of the other candidates.
Right.
So it concerns me.
I mean, I'm concerned too.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Karen. Great to hear from you. Let's see here, Colleen in Manhattan. Hey, Colleen, what's up?
Well, in Long Island, but
okay,
how
close
are
enough.
you?
Good.
Only 50 miles away.
There you go.
I didn't get to see three of the candidates. I set my DVR, and for some reason they opted out of Amy, Julio, and Kamala.
Okay.
So I was getting news from England, about Brexit and all of that.
Right.
But then the first one I saw was Joe Biden, and I saw Biden, I saw Elizabeth and Bernie and Corey and Beto and Pete.
Right. Okay. And your thoughts on that lineup?
And I have an echo in my ear, so it's kind of hard for some reason. But I will tell you, when I saw Joe Biden come out, I was not surprised at his performance. The first thing I noticed was that he kind of came dashing out like he's a young man. And that kind of worried me. And then his rambling and not answering the questions directly, which I also noticed that Beto did. Mm-hmm. He didn't answer, he wanted to give you the answer he wanted to give you and not the question you asked. And both of them did that. Pete Buttigieg was good, and Corey, who is a Rhodes Scholar, was very smart in the way he handled things.
Yeah.
But I still come down to Bernie and Elizabeth, and I have to say that last night took me towards Bernie a little bit more, and I like Elizabeth a lot. And by the way, what you said about Joe Biden before, I think he is a decent, gracious, good person.
Yeah.
And I think you're absolutely right about your assessment of why he's in here. Because I think he really is concerned, because we have a very dangerous person in the White House. And
absolutely.
If anybody is not concerned, they are either delusional or sleeping with their head in the sand.
I would say, in fact, Joe Biden is probably the only one of the Democratic candidates who isn't in the race because he desperately wants to be president. He's in the race because he's desperately concerned about the fate and future of his country and the world.
I agree.
I think all the rest of them are desperately concerned about that too, but I think all the rest of them are really fighting to become president. And Joe is like, well, I'll do this if that's what you all want,
Well, my takeaway was the four I looked at not Beto, but Corey, Pete, Elizabeth, and Bernie, all came away with a strong performance, with an understanding in different variations of communities of color, climate control, understanding, that everything dovetails into, Medicare for all and, getting rid of toxic waste. And the only difference I found at the end of the day was their take on nuclear power.
Yes, nuclear power and public versus private with regard to utilities. And
right.
Yeah.
Now,
and nobody mentioned the fact that nuclear power plants don't produce a single watt of carbon-free energy until about their 10th year in service, because so much carbon is consumed making all that concrete, mining the uranium, transporting the uranium, refining the uranium, turning it into fuel rods, all the steel. I mean, it's crazy.
No, I had an uncle who worked at Brookhaven Labs out here in Long Island, and he had a philosophy about nuclear power. He was a he was a professor of biology, but he was brilliant. I mean, he was like Einstein brilliant. And what he said was, just because we can create it doesn't mean we can control it. And watching humanity create nuclear power was like watching a 3-year-old run around the house with a stick of dynamite in one hand, a lit match in the other, and hoping the poor thing doesn't blow itself up.
Yeah, absolutely. Colleen, I want to get some more calls in, but thank you for the call. Some very cogent points there. Robert in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Hey, Robert, what's up?
Hi, thank you for taking my call. I just wanted to express my support for what Bernie said. And kind
what
of
did
highlight
Bernie say that you want to support?
He said that the utilities need to be made public, and I just think that
Elizabeth Warren was tossed that. He actually, I don't recall him saying that in the debate. Maybe he did, or in the town hall. But the question to Elizabeth Warren was, Bernie Sanders thinks that all electric utilities should be publicly owned. What do you say? And Elizabeth Warren, of course, is trying to avoid being labeled as a socialist and trying to be identified as a capitalist. And she said, well, I don't think that's the problem. I think the problem is regulation. You need to say to even the corporate-owned utilities, you may not use carbon anymore. Now figure out how you're going to do it. And, there's a lot of truth to that, although I'm personally a fan of publicly owned utilities, and I think that anything that's a natural monopoly, water, septic, electric, increasingly internet, I think should all be publicly owned. But, she's not willing to go that far, and I understand that. I also understand why Bernie is willing to go that far.
Exactly. I just wanted to say that Boulder, Colorado wanted to do this, wanted to municipalize because they,
did they succeed?
That they could not, and they've had problems.
Yeah, Robert, I'm sorry, we're out of time. I know here in Portland, we tried to municipalize and we failed. The company beat us.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
In fact, specifically, when PG&E, the local utility here, after it got spun off from Enron, the city tried to buy it and they turned down the city's offer, which was above the asking price. And welcome back. Marge in Webster, New York. Hey, Marge, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Yeah, I just had a couple comments about the town hall last night. Mm-hmm. I think they all did a pretty good job. I have my favorite. I think Bernie hit it out of the park. But my comment is more around the questions that were asked. Concerned about the way that the questions are being framed. They all talked about, addressing the climate crisis in terms of, improving the economy, adding more jobs, a lot of positive things that can be accomplished if we really address this. Questions that were on the screen and were being asked, here's one that I really was annoyed with. What's the biggest sacrifice you would ask Americans to make to help solve the climate crisis? I mean, a question that's worded like that is just posing it as such a negative thing.
Yeah.
That
was the last question that was given to Elizabeth Warren, basically. How bad are you going to make Americans hurt?
Right. There was another question, do you want to bet the economy on the ambitions of the Green New Deal? Right. I mean, it was just worded so negatively.
No, these were Republican frames. They were all Republican frames. And in a way, it's a bad thing because it gets people thinking in terms of Republican frames. On the other hand, to those candidates who were actually able to blow up those frames, like when Elizabeth Warren ridiculed Anderson Cooper for saying, "What, you want to get rid of my candle-shaped light bulbs?" It blew up that frame, which was really good. But there were a couple of candidates who basically fell into the frame and tried to operate inside that frame, which is a trap.
Right. Yeah, and I just, my advice or what I'd like to see is them to push back more on those frames. I know they can do it. Bernie did it at the debate last time when he was asked a very Republican frank question about Medicare for all. He came back and then he said, in a couple of minutes you're going to see a commercial against Medicare for all. So
right, and then they cut him off. Yeah, no, I'm with you, Marge. Yeah. Marge, I want to get another caller in here before I have to hit a break. Thank you for the call. Tim in Burlington, Vermont. Hey, Tim, what's up?
Tom, how you doing? Thanks for taking my call. I appreciate it. Hey, listen, I watched a little bit of the debates last night. I'm a no for Joe. I'm not going to say too much more than that. I yearn for Bern. I think you were talking earlier. I think you need to talk more about the socialism debate. Mm-hmm. People are uneducated, and I've debated. This is for instance, I've debated with some Republicans that are for Trump, and I'm astonished when one would tell me that he's delivered 88% of what he promised, and I'm just at awe and say, where are you getting this information from? Where are you getting this? Yeah, and
wait a minute. Mexico's going to pay for the wall. Hillary's going to go to jail. ISIS is going to be destroyed. He's going to release his taxes. He's going to halt funding sanctuary cities. He's going to open up the libel laws. He's going to repeal Obamacare. He's never going to play golf or take a vacation. He's going to bring back 50,000 coal jobs. He's going to fight for the gay community. Every American family is going to see an average $4,000 raise. He's going to eliminate the federal deficit. I don't see any of that, Tim.
Hey, I hear you.
Yeah, it's bizarre. Tim, thanks for the call. Every day here on the Thom Hartmann Program, Louise and I and our team, Sean, Nate, Shira, Dave, Chase, Sue, Nigel, Ron, we all work to put together the very, very best show we possibly can. And there's an enormous amount of work that goes into the show. And one of the things that comes out of that is a lot of content, a lot of specific information that we go through and we dig out and, we want to share with you. And Sue puts that into our newsletter every week. And I think you will, if you don't already receive our newsletter, it comes in email every day, about an hour after we're off the air, or maybe a couple hours after we're off the air. And Sue goes through and pulls literally every link to every story that we talked about and puts it into the newsletter. It's free. We don't sell a list or anything. You complete safety and security. There's no charge. There's no nothing. Just, plug in your email address over at thomhartmann.com and you get signed up for the newsletter. It's all fairly obvious. You'll see it on the website. So check it out, thomhartmann.com. Thank you. Let's check in with Bob Ney and Talk Media News and find out what's going on in the world today. This report brought to you by goatsfortheoldgoat.com and Loving What You Do, new book by Ellen Ratner. Bob, welcome back. What's on your mind, or what's on your mind? What's in the news today?
Well, that's on my mind too. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
I just have to start with this story. The Alabama claim by President Trump.
Oh, Sharpiegate. Hey, have you seen some of the stuff going around the internet? There's a picture of a desert with a bunch of little black lines drawn in it with Sharpies. It says Trump proof that Trump built his wall. One where he puts a little line above his own head standing next to Obama. Proof Trump is taller than Obama. I mean, it's hilarious, Bob.
when I started at 6:20 this morning, one of the stations said, "Do you have your Sharpie handy?" And I said, "Yes, I'm going to make my own news on the side of the news I send out. I'm going to do that."
There you go.
But the reason I wanted to say something about this story quickly is because he's come under fire now, the president, from prominent meteorologists who have no political dog in the hunt, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're saying this is incorrect information. Okay, he today, in the last few hours, doubled down on his assertion now that the storm was at one point headed for Alabama. Now, he doubled down on that. But this is the rest of the story. Okay, he's now saying that this week-old map had been doctored to demean him, and now this is all fake news in order to demean him. First of all, the media didn't place that map there. Right. If anything, somebody in the office must have thought it would be humorous if they were going to demean him with a Sharpie. I'm just saying, this is just, he can't let something go at all. Right. And so to double down on this and say that, this is fake news and it's to demean him, it came from his own organization.
What's so amazing, when I first saw that picture and first saw the news story, I thought, this will be a 20-minute story, right? It's another example of Trump being thin-skinned and willing to lie about anything. I mean, he's told 13,000 lies so far, according to the Washington Post, if my memory serves me right.
But this even gets more amazing with the disaster. So I needed to mention it.
Yeah, the more he doubles down on it, then he triples down on it. Then we find out it's actually a violation of federal law to alter a weather map produced by NOAA.
Correct. So I just wanted to mention that.
So somebody committed a crime.
The other story. Right. Well, I don't know if they'll do anything about it. I doubt it. But and then the other story that really, I hate to say this, doesn't matter, but the architect of his Middle East peace plan is leaving the White House. And I don't know if anybody really knows him, but Jason Greenblatt is going to leave the administration in several weeks and go to the private sector. Usually they follow up in the news stories of why it matters, and frankly, it really doesn't, because the Middle East peace team is Jared Kushner, U.S. Ambassador to Israel David Friedman, and the Kushner deputy, Avi Berkowitz. And of course, Netanyahu has praised the work of Greenblatt, but the truth is there is no Middle East peace plan. They've announced the economic part of it, but not the political part of it. They're holding that till after the Israeli election. But none of this will matter who they really replace him with, because there is no peace plan. Right. There's none. Right. And it's negotiated only on one side by Trump. So I just wanted to mention that he's leaving, but it's not going to matter to report who actually replaces him, basically.
Amen.
Right. And a judge has ruled against the terrorism watch list, which is very interesting, because the federal judge ruled yesterday.
This is the list that they check you against at airports?
Well, there's two of them, actually. There's the no-fly list, which they check at the airports, which had a court decision against it, which forced the government to do something about it. The late Senator
Ted Kennedy was on that list, yeah.
Yeah, and he actually told me personally about that. He worked on some legislation with us, and he had told about that story of how he kept going and they kept stopping him because he was on a terror no-fly list.
It's amazing. He told you that when you were in Congress.
John Dingell. Yes, and John Dingell also told us the story of how he kept getting stopped, and at one point in time they took John Dingell aside to actually have him basically strip searched at the airport, the late John Dingell. And the best one is the civil rights icon John Lewis, Congressman John Lewis, who could not get himself off the no-fly list. He was being stopped, and the government told him, why don't you just go ahead and carry papers on you? And John Lewis said, yeah, that's what they did in South Africa. No, I'm not doing that. So right. I did want to mention that. Now, that's the no-fly list. This is a second list, and this is these are known or suspected terrorists. When Cat Stevens, who is now Yusuf Islam, came into America, he was on the suspected terrorist list because of his name, Yusuf Islam. Whoa. And he was turned around and sent back to London, the singer Cat Stevens. Right. So this is this list. Now, what's going to be built up because of this court case, though, from the administration? Because the administration is answering that, of course, this is going to hurt the battle on terrorism, and this is not discriminatory. But the judge has said this type of screening is absolutely unconstitutional. So the reality of the story is This is not going to allow for terrorism. What this will do, this court case of this ruling, if the Trump administration doesn't plan to fight it, will force them to do the right thing and clean the list up.
Well, that would be good. That would be very good.
Maybe.
Bob Ney with Talk Media News. Thank you, Bob.
See you in Alabama.
Oh yeah? Oh, yeah. There you go. Well, at least we've avoided the disaster that we all knew was coming, right, Bob? Bob, have a great day. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
Well, it's the fall, so it's time for the Free Speech TV Fund Drive. And here we are asking for your help once again. One of the wonderful things about Free Speech TV and a lot of independent and nonprofit media is that you don't have to put up with commercials. People who listen to my radio show on the commercial side, it gets interrupted constantly. During those interruptions that people listening to commercial radio, they're hearing commercials. I'm still taking calls and talking to you. It's one of the things that we do for Free Speech TV, that we've always done for Free Speech TV. It makes a substantially more difficult day for me, including bathroom breaks. But it's the right thing, right? It's the right thing to do, is to put together an actual hour show that you can watch for a whole hour, with including the book reports and everything else. Rather than taking 4 breaks an hour and throwing old content and crap like that in there. So we're really dancing our hearts out for Free Speech TV and for you. And we would appreciate your help here with Free Speech TV. So your contribution today, your one-time contributions, a portion of those go to support our program as well. So if you make one-time contributions of $20, $50, $100, $150, $250, or $1,000, that's great. That's really helpful to us, and it's really helpful to Free Speech TV. So please consider calling now and making your contribution. The number is 877-378-8669, as I recall. Is that right, Nate? It's not written down on this email. 877-378-8669. With a $20 gift, you get a 3x5-inch all-weather sticker, which is basically a picture of me, and it says the Thom Hartmann Program. With a $50 gift, you get a Change the Channel Free Speech TV tote bag. With a $100 gift, you get a Free Speech TV any functional adult long-sleeve shirt, and the sizes vary from small to XXX large. With a $150 gift, you get my new book, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America. Now, this book is not yet shipping, but we got our copies last week, and so I'm assuming Free Speech TV is going to be getting theirs in the next week or two. So, and I'll be signing book plates, and we'll put them in the books, so you'll have an autographed copy of this book, and we'll get those off to you. That's with a $150 one-time contribution. With a $250 one-time contribution, you can participate in a virtual meet and greet. That is an off-the-record conversation where we just all meet on Zoom or Skype or however. I think we're using Zoom now to do this. You just pop in, you'll get an invitation link in email, and it'll say, click here, and it'll pop open a window, and And I won't be able to see you because there's going to be a whole bunch of us, but you'll be able to see me, and I'll be able to hear you. And, you can ask any question you want, and I'll do my very best to give you just a straight-up answer. And, we can have conversation as a group and individually, within the context of the group on that. Just like when people come here for our actual meet and greets, our physical meet and greets, we hang out in the studio for the last hour of the show, and then we walk down the street to a restaurant and have a nice lunch together. We can do that with this virtual meet and greet, this $250 one-time contribution virtual meet and greet. But you don't have to go anywhere. If you don't live in this neighborhood, if you don't live near Portland, Oregon, you don't have to buy an airplane ticket or anything else. Now, on the other hand, if you would like to come see Portland, and I got to tell you, particularly if you're interested in Meatless Mondays, if you're interested in trying to go for, a little less meat in your diet, although people come for our meet and greets and they can order anything they want on the menu, and I'm not going to pick on you, don't worry. But Portland, this just blows my mind. There's this app called Happy Cow that just shows vegan restaurants wherever you are. It's kind of like Open Table or something like that, one of these apps. And Portland's got like 20 or 30 vegan restaurants. It's just incredible. And hundreds of, probably over 100 restaurants that heavily lean toward vegetarian. And when I was in New York, I pulled up this app, and there weren't as many restaurants as there are in Portland. It's just an incredible food town. So if you are into food, come to our meet and greet. Now, we're just going to get a nice meal at a nice restaurant that anybody can get anything that they want at. But if you're thinking about coming and seeing Portland with a $1,000 contribution, you can spend an hour here with us in the last hour of the show in the studio, and then we'll have lunch together, and that'll all be nice. But mostly, let's support Free Speech TV. Your one-time contributions are really appreciated. Please call now, 877-378-8669. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number for Free Speech TV. And of course, you can also donate online at freespeech.org. And if you donate during the time that our show is on the air, then we get credit for that as well. So please give us a shout now, right? 877-378-8669. Thanks so much. Every day here on the Thom Hartmann Program, Louise and I and our team, Sean, Nate, Shira, Dave, Chase, Sue, Nigel, Ron, we all work to put together the very, very best show we possibly can. And there's an enormous amount of work that goes into the show. And one of the things that comes out of that is a lot of content, a lot of specific information that we go through and we dig out and we want to share with you. And Sue puts that into our newsletter every week. And I think you will, if you don't already receive our newsletter, it comes in email every day, about an hour after we're off the air, or maybe a couple hours after we're off the air. And Sue goes through and pulls literally every link to every story that we talked about and puts it into the newsletter. It's free. We don't sell a list or anything. You complete safety and security. There's no charge. There's no nothing. Just plug in your email address over at thomhartmann.com. And you get signed up for the newsletter. It's all fairly obvious. You'll see it on the website. So check it out, thomhartmann.com. Thank you. Now in the civil service.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. On the line with us is Jeff Sharlet. He's the author of 6 books, including The Family, The Secret Fundamentalism at the Heart of American Power, and the follow-up, C Street, The Fundamentalist Threat to American Democracy. They've made this into a 5-part miniseries over on Netflix. Louise and I have watched, I believe, the first 3 or 4 parts of this. I don't think we've gotten to the last one yet. Netflix.com, of course. And Jeff is on the line with us. You can tweet him at Jeff Sharlet, SHARLET. Jeff, welcome back to the program.
Hi, Tom. Good to be with you.
This was absolutely fascinating. I mean, you and I have talked a number of times over the years But it wasn't until I watched this documentary on Netflix that I really got how deeply embedded into the family you personally were, how you got there. I mean, you know, I know that you had told me your story on the air, but and I had, you know, I'd read parts of it in your book, but it's just extraordinary. I strongly encourage anybody in America to watch this. Give us for those people who don't know what we're talking about or what I'm blithering about here, give us a 1-minute recap of what the family is, how you got inside it, and, well, let's start with that.
Well, the family is the oldest. It's the most influential, and strangely, it's got a peculiar affection for privacy or secrecy. So it's the oldest, most influential, and most secretive Christian conservative organization in Washington. It goes back to the 1930s when it was formed as an anti-New Deal, anti-labor coalition. Politics that it's never really abandoned, and they differ from other Christian right organizations in the sense that they are not interested in, and they're not interested in the masses. They're not interested in everyday people. They believe that the whole thing started with an when God came to the founder of the organization, so he said, and gave him a direct vision, so he said, saying that Christianity had been getting it wrong for 2,000 years with his focus on the poor and the suffering and the down and out, that God instead wanted him to be a minister to those whom he called the up and out, the elites, key men. And that's what they've done. They focused on politicians, business people, military leaders in the United States and abroad. And there's no membership application. The way you get in, the way I stumbled on this is years ago. I was working on a book about the varieties of religious experience, and a friend asked me to meet with her brother, who she was afraid had joined a cult. He had sort of dropped out and moved to Washington to be a part of this thing, and he invited me to come and live with a group of young men who were being sort of groomed for leadership in the organization. And pretty quickly I got a sense of the political scale of the event just by nature of the people I was meeting. I prayed with former Reagan Attorney General Ed Meese. There was senators, congressmen around, ambassadors, the then right-wing Prime Minister of Norway, Kjell Bondevik, just dropped by for a visit. The prominent right-wing columnist Cal Thomas came and gave us a lesson in biblical capitalism. And so I saw this was a much larger thing, and that's what led me into my investigation.
As I was watching this, and I was watching, you know, the essentially, I'm assuming, recreation of your young experience there, it occurred to me that you had dangled in front of you this extraordinary opportunity. You could spend the rest of your life hanging out with the extremely wealthy and the extremely powerful in in beyond 5-star accommodations, living a life of wealth and power that's just unimaginable to most Americans. And yet you turned away from it and chose to expose it. What caused that?
One of the things what we want to show in the Netflix series, we want to show the appeal, right? I think for a lot of secular people, for a lot of liberal people, they can look at Christian conservatives and they tell themselves, oh, these people are just dupes or fools or something like that. And that's not the case. The family are sophisticated folks, they're educated folks, they are pretty much affluent, wealthy folks. What is the appeal to this organization? So we wanted to show that, and the first couple episodes are sort of dedicated to that, seeing like what might draw you in. But at the same time, we wanted to show you what might frighten a sensible person away, which is why we start in the very first episode with the longtime leader, Doug Coe, delivering what is sort of his core sermon, one of his ideas. How do you understand who Jesus is? They preach a theology of Jesus plus nothing. Well, what do you mean by Jesus? Is this the Jesus that you encounter at your church? Not exactly. He says the best way to understand Jesus, he says, is to look at the example of leaders such as, I'm quoting here, Hitler, Lenin, Mao. It's horrifying. Now, Hitler is a fascist. Mao is not. He's a communist. What's the common denominator? Strength. Absolute strength. And that's their idea of what Jesus is. And
so is this kind of a Protestant reinvention of the Catholic Church?
Well, no, because they've drawn in Catholics as well. I mean, it was originally a Protestant organization as well. But no, it's not. I mean, Jesus plus nothing strips away everything. It strips away most of the Scripture. It strips away the prophets. It strips away theology. It strips away history. It becomes really about power. And you look, and this. Wait till you get to the 5th episode, Tom. You said you haven't seen it. We call it the Wolf King. That's their term for figures such as Donald Trump, and that's where we bring it into the present. We are saying, like, how can they embrace a figure like Trump? Because they look at his power and they say the power is evidence enough to us that he's chosen by God. Doesn't matter if he's not a pious man.
Right.
They call him an imperfect vessel for God's will. That goes beyond any kind of mainstream theology that we encounter. It's a theology of power, pure and simple.
Right. Yeah, and they compare him to the Persian king. What was it?
Cyrus.
Yeah, there you go. But to the question, what do you think that it certainly seemed from the first 3 episodes that I watched? It certainly seemed that the vast majority, probably all of the people inside this cult, actually believe the tenets, the theology, this kind of Calvinistic worldview, that God has chosen some people for leadership, and therefore we need to basically, suck up to those people or work with those people or help guide those people in a way like Jesus. And at what point did you look at this and say, wait a minute? I mean, why is it that nobody has exposed this before and you did? I guess that's really my question.
I wish I could make that claim, but in fact, in the series we see Lisa Getter, Pulitzer Prize winner for the LA Times, who in 2002 completed a year-long investigation into the family of the fellowship, as it's sometimes called, front page of the LA Times, looking at the ways in which they were functioning as a liaison between the U.S. government and really the most brutal, violent forces in Central America.
I get that, but she wasn't an insider who came out.
She wasn't an insider, but there have been a number of exposés, and the first one I can find is in 1959 in the Washington Post. 1975, the great Robert Scheer and Playboy put aside the other parts of the magazine. Nonetheless, they did a great investigative job looking at the ways in which this was functioning as an off-the-books bank for congressmen, which is to say an illegal bank. Right. And there's never been a follow-up. And there's no conspiracy here. There's a bigger problem. It's the conventional wisdom of the press and frankly, of the left and of liberals, too, who want to believe that Christian fundamentalists are these sort of pulpit pounders and Bible thumpers and these kind of Jerry Falwells in a too-tight suit and a Southern accent. And when someone who is sophisticated comes along, we see in the series, we got a number of members of the family to sit on camera for the first time. They felt like, okay, we're going to have to deal with this because it's happening. So we see A. Larry Ross, who is a leader of the organization, is PR man for major evangelical figures. We see former Congressman Zach Wamp. We see Senator Jim Langford. And we got these people to talk about their involvement. They're not thumping their Bibles. They're not pulpit pounders. They don't fit the stereotype of what a fundamentalist would be, and yet they're exercising more power for fundamentalism and for steering the United States toward a kind of complete collapse of the wall between church and state than any of these more popular TV figures that we're familiar with.
So what do we do with this knowledge, Jeff Sharlet?
We make some books. We make a Netflix series. We bring sunlight to it, right? And
do you see this as a? I mean, it seems to me that you're saying this is essentially a cancerous force in American democracy. I mean, shouldn't there be a specific, heads-on taking that on?
Well, I mean, we do have this thing called the First Amendment, right? The First Amendment, and so, for instance, their one public event, the National Prayer Breakfast, which every president since Eisenhower has spoken of, is a flagrant violation of the First Amendment. And it's a serious violation because, as both I and the New York Times have reported, it functions as an off-the-books lobbying event. It's a week-long lobbying festival. Foreign actors, and as the episode 3, we tell the story of how, through the National Prayer Breakfast, the Russian spy Maria Butina came in and had access to American power. That's not her taking advantage of the prayer breakfast. That's her using the prayer breakfast the way it was meant to be made. And, working on their parallel, they hold a parallel event in Moscow, and countries around the world. So we can say, wait a minute, we have that challenge. But really, what do? We need to stay on the story for a long time. There's been some successes. There's been some small successes that are important. In the series, we see the Reverend Eric Williams and Leslie Kern, and they took on, the family had a tax-subsidized housing, an illegal gift to congressmen. They're giving housing to congressmen and their C Street house, right? Registered as a church. And Reverend Williams and Leslie Kern were able to lead the fight to get that. This is not a church, to get that taken away. Other stories that we see in the series, as you get into episode 4, we see Congressman Bob Adderholt of Alabama, Republican congressman, longtime member of the family, has traveled to 18 countries representing the family, but as a U.S. congressman. And in episode 4, we see him in real time going to Romania, promoting an anti-LGBTQ agenda, trying to achieve there what they can't achieve here. And that's a hopeful story, because Romanian people push back. It can't be done.
Yeah, amazing stuff. Okay, I'm going to watch episodes 4 and 5 tonight, and I encourage everybody to, if you have a Netflix subscription. In fact, this series is worth the cost of a Netflix subscription. Check out The Family. Jeff Charlotte, thanks so much for being with us, Jeff.
Thank you, Tom.
Great talking with you. We'll be back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We'll be back with more of the news of the day and your calls right after this. And welcome back. And let's see here. Jeff in Asheville, North Carolina. Hey, Jeff, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. A couple times in the last few months, you have said on the air, concurred with me that Marianne Williamson would make a great, wonderful president, despite having no political experience. Aside from that, she'll definitely be electable because reparations, of course, bring in the black community, and being a religious, spiritual person will bring in people on the right who are spiritual and religious. But I'd like you to elaborate to the audience as to why you think her lack of political experience won't be a handicap.
I think that's one of the big challenges that Marianne's going to have. I know Marianne.
I know that, but you personally don't think that as a problem. So tell everyone why you don't think it's a problem. Someone who's so smart.
Marianne actually does have political experience. She ran for Congress in California. She's been involved in politics peripherally for a lot of years. She has brought politics into her. She does this regular weekly. I don't know if you call it a church service. In Los Angeles, has for years and years. She used to do it in Detroit. In fact, I filled in for her a couple of times in Detroit. And so I think that she is a good person and a serious candidate. I think it's extremely unlikely she's going to end up the nominee of the party. But, I've got nothing bad to say about her, or frankly, any of the other people who are running right now. And even my concerns about Joe Biden's performance last night are more, okay, we're back to this old Joe Biden who ran for president a couple of times and couldn't get there because he kept fumbling things up. And he certainly did last night in the town hall. And I was, frankly, very concerned about that. Bill in Sacramento. Hey, Bill, what's on your mind?
I was actually... I got kind of baffled. I'm actually will vote for anyone who wins the nomination. I don't care right now because I don't know.
Vote blue no matter who.
I don't know who to vote for. Yeah. And the reason why is because I don't, we talked about this last week that I don't think Donald Trump will leave. Lindsey Graham actually said he would vote for, a long time ago, after McCain passed away, they vote for Trump either way. So, I heard them call him fascist Lindsey. I'm going, okay. And that's part of the reason I want to move to England. I'm tired of this. I really
You're moving to New Zealand, Bill?
England.
Oh, England. Yeah, your phone is breaking up. So
I am sorry about that.
So you're moving to England not because you have an economic opportunity there, or you're in love with somebody from Great Britain, but because you're tired of American politics. Why not just take up yoga or something and stop paying attention to American politics?
That's not it. It's medical. It's a little bit better.
So you're moving to you're moving to the UK because they have a national health care system, and you're not getting the medical care you need here in the United States with our for-profit fragmented system.
Actually, no, I'm not. Because I'm on Medicare now. Mm-hmm. However, I used to pay $1,110 a month for health care.
Right.
That's enough to buy a car.
Yeah. Yeah, that's more than what people typically pay for a car. Even on a lease, even a fancy car, even a Mercedes. Anyhow, we'll be back. It is, what time is it? It's 22 minutes past the hour. Stick around. We'll be right back taking your calls here. And I still have a stack of news stories here to get to, too. I'm going to go through some of those right after this break. Stick around. Every day here on the Thom Hartmann Program, Louise and I and our team, Sean, Nate, Shira, Dave, Chase, Sue, Nigel, Ron, we all work to put together the very, very best show we possibly can. And there's an enormous amount of work that goes into the show. And one of the things that comes out of that is a lot of content, a lot of specific information that we go through and we dig out and we want to share with you. And Sue puts that into our newsletter every week. And I think you will, if you don't already receive our newsletter, it comes in email every day, about an hour after we're off the air, or maybe a couple hours after we're off the air. And Sue goes through and pulls literally every link to every story that we talked about and puts it into the newsletter. It's free. We don't sell the list or anything. You complete safety and security. There's no charge. There's no nothing. Just plug in your email address over at thomhartmann.com. And you get signed up for the newsletter. It's all fairly obvious. You'll see it on the website. So check it out, thomhartmann.com. Thank you. And welcome back. So there's a bunch of stuff in the news. Of course, we'll see what happened if Joe Biden's still going to do his fundraiser tonight at the home of this fossil fuel executive. That is playing out. But interestingly, this over at the Daily Beast, the headline kind of says the whole thing. Trump world anxiety grows over a rising Elizabeth Warren. Warren has recovered Hannah Trudeau and Aswang Subasang. The reporter's note, my apologies to Aswang if I'm mispronouncing the name. Anyhow, Warren has recovered from that initial stumble and steadily gained ground, that stumble being, the whole Native American thing. A Republican strategist is quoted in this article, and this is fascinating. Sure, the Republican base will ultimately loathe Elizabeth Warren, but she doesn't inspire the same kind of historic vitriol that Hillary Clinton did. That, combined with the fact that SCOTUS, Trump, isn't on the line as it was in 2016. In other words, it's not basically, on Hillary. And remembering that Trump needed the perfect inside straight to barely win last time, any Democrat is going to be tough to beat, Warren included. Now, this is the Republican worldview. And then the writer's note, within Trump world and the president's reelection effort, there has been a dramatic shift in how Warren is talked about now. They've stopped making fun of it, and they're starting to take her very seriously. Barry Bennett, a former senior advisor to the Trump campaign in 2016, says Elizabeth Warren will have an energized base, Biden would not. It's just a fascinating piece here over at Daily Beast. I've been spending less and less time at Daily Beast, but occasionally they're really hitting some good pieces. Over on Common Dreams, if this wasn't so dangerous, I'd be laughing. This is the Sharpie Gate. It turns out it is a violation of federal law to modify a weather map. And so the question that I think we all need to be asking now, in addition maybe to making fun of Donald Trump's Sharpie stuff, that's all over the internet. But there's a serious question here. When you lie about the weather, you can cause people to die. I mean, if people in Alabama were freaked out about the weather and they started fleeing and they got in car accidents or whatever, I mean, hysteria is a terrible thing. It's the reason why it's illegal to yell fire in a crowded theater, or it should be if it's not. It's because it can cause people to die, and you do not want that. So but apparently this is what Trump is up to. Meanwhile, Trump is stripping $400 million out of Puerto Rico to pay for his border wall down on the Texas border. $400 million bucks. It's incredible. And I got to tell you about the economy. We'll do that when we get back, and then we'll pick up your phone calls as well. 202-808-9925. It is hitting the bottom of the hour here, 28 minutes past the hour.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
We'll be right back with more of the news and your calls right after this. Well, it's the fall, so it's time for the Free Speech TV Fund Drive. And here we are asking for your help once again. One of the wonderful things about Free Speech TV and a lot of independent and nonprofit media is that you don't have to put up with commercials. People who listen to my radio show on the commercial side, it gets interrupted constantly. During those interruptions that people listening to commercial radio, they're hearing commercials. I'm still taking calls and talking to you. It's one of the things that we do for Free Speech TV, that we've always done for Free Speech TV. It makes a substantially more difficult day for me, including bathroom breaks. But it's the right thing, right? It's the right thing to do, is to put together an actual hour show that you can watch for a whole hour, with including the book reports and everything else. Rather than taking 4 breaks an hour and throwing old content and crap like that in there. So we're really dancing our hearts out for Free Speech TV and for you. And we would appreciate your help here with Free Speech TV. So your contribution today, your one-time contributions, a portion of those go to support our program as well. So if you make one-time contributions of $20, $50, $100, $150, $250, or $1,000, that's great. That's really helpful to us, and it's really helpful to Free Speech TV. So please consider calling now and making your contribution. The number is 877-378-8669, as I recall. Is that right, Nate? It's not written down on this email. 877-378-8669. With a $20 gift, you get a 3x5-inch all-weather sticker, which is basically a picture of me, and it says the Thom Hartmann Program. With a $50 gift, you get a Change the Channel Free Speech TV tote bag. With a $100 gift, you get a Free Speech TV Any Functional Adult long sleeve shirt, and the sizes vary from small to XXX large. With a $150 gift, you get my new book, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America. Now, this book is not yet shipping, but we got our copies last week, and so I'm assuming Free Speech TV is going to be getting theirs in the next week or two. So, and I'll be signing book plates, and we'll put them in the books, so you'll have an autographed copy of this book, and we'll get those off to you. That's with a $150 one-time contribution. With a $250 one-time contribution, you can participate in a virtual meet and greet. That is an off-the-record conversation where we just all meet on Zoom or Skype or however. I think we're using Zoom now to do this. You just pop in, you'll get an invitation link in email, and it'll say, click here, and it'll pop open a window, and I won't be able to see you because there's going to be a whole bunch of us, but you'll be able to see me, and I'll be able to hear you. And, you can ask any question you want, and I'll do my very best to give you just a straight up answer. And, we can have conversation as a group and individually, within the context of the group on that. Just like when people come here for our actual meet and greets, our physical meet and greets, we hang out in the studio for the last hour of the show, and then we walk down the street to a restaurant and have a nice lunch together. We can do that with this virtual meet and greet, this $250 one-time contribution virtual meet and greet. but you don't have to go anywhere. if you don't live in this neighborhood, if you don't live near Portland, Oregon, you don't have to buy an airplane ticket or anything else. Now, on the other hand, if you would like to come see Portland, and I got to tell you, particularly if you're interested in Meatless Mondays, if you're interested in trying to go for, a little less meat in your diet, although people come for our meet and greets and they can order anything they want on the menu, and I'm not going to pick on you, don't worry. But Portland, this just blows my mind. There's this app called Happy Cow that just shows vegan restaurants wherever you are. It's kind of like Open Table or something like that, one of these apps. And Portland's got like 20 or 30 vegan restaurants. It's just incredible. And hundreds of, probably over 100 restaurants that heavily lean toward vegetarian. And when I was in New York, I pulled up this app, and there weren't as many restaurants as there are in Portland. It's just an incredible food town. So if you are into food, come to our meet and greet. Now, we're just going to get a nice meal at a nice restaurant that anybody can get anything that they want at. But if you're thinking about coming and seeing Portland with a $1,000 contribution, you can spend an hour here with us in the last hour of the show in the studio, and then we'll have lunch together, and that'll all be nice. But mostly, let's support Free Speech TV. Your one-time contributions are really appreciated. Please call now, 877-378-8669, 877-378-8669 is the telephone number for Free Speech TV. And of course, you can also donate online at freespeech.org. And if you donate during the time that our show is on the air, then we get credit for that as well. So please give us a shout now, right? 877-378-8669. Thanks so much.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Ian Ruffowitz. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. I mentioned the economy as we were hitting the break there. The Fed officials are now warning that this is, what's his name here? The head of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, the president. John Williams. He told reporters yesterday, quote, "The consumer is now carrying all of the weight or much of the weight for growth going forward." In other words, business isn't growing. The economy generally isn't going. The real estate sector is actually, we've had now two weeks in a row where real estate refis are actually down over 2%. Weakness surfacing in manufacturing, in financial markets. It looks like the entire world economy might be heading toward recession. There's a fascinating piece in today's Financial Times about how the European Central Bank is, or the central banks of a number of these European countries are looking at these essentially disasters associated with, or the potential for a disaster associated with negative interest rates. Negative interest rates have never been tried before. Literally never. I mean, going back 7,000 years to ancient Sumeria and the Epic of Gilgamesh, never before have we seen negative interest rates. And this should be like a bright, flashing red light to anybody who's thinking about these things and anybody who's concerned about it. Anyhow, picking up your phone calls, Sam in Denver. Hey, Sam, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. So I have a question for you. So even 50 years ago, the policies of Joe Biden were like mainstream Democratic Party, right?
No. 50 years ago, the policies of Joe Biden were Republican Party. The Democratic Party was considerably to the left 50 years ago where it is now. Jack Kennedy and Lyndon Johnson, promoted Medicaid, Medicare, the Great Society, Section 8 housing, all kinds of programs expanding unemployment. In particular, Medicare was designed, and Robert Ball, the guy who worked with LBJ to do this, was designed within a decade to become a system to cover all Americans. So, no, Joe Biden's positions back 50 years ago would have been considered Republican positions. They were Eisenhower Republican positions.
I see. So, I have a question.
And it's not just Joe Biden, by the way. This is the quote mainstream, the corporate mainstream within the Democratic Party. Forgive my interrupting you.
I see. No worries. And Hey, my other question is, so I know you talked about like David Koch kind of starting the Libertarian. He had a lot to do with the Libertarian Party back in the 70s. And
right, he ran
in
1980. He ran for vice president on the Libertarian ticket, and,
yeah,
he threw a couple $1 million into the party.
And I thought I couldn't help but crack up. I was like dying of laughter when I read his platform from 1980. But when do you think the Republican Party really went further to the right? Like do you think it went further to the right during the Obama years, or were they relatively consistent between?
No, they've been consistent. They have been consistent since 1980. I mean, there was a faction within the Republican Party, the Goldwater faction, that Nelson Rockefeller got up in the and this, I'm sure it lives on YouTube. I've got the clip on this computer, but it would take me 3 minutes to find it. Where in the 1964 Republican convention, and Nelson Rockefeller got up and gave a speech about how we need to find a rational middle ground. And that was, by rational middle ground, he was talking about, to the left was Dwight Eisenhower, who in 1956 ran for re-election on the platform of the fact that he had added millions of new union jobs and strengthened unions. He had added millions of people to Social Security and strengthened and expanded Social Security. I mean, that was the left side of the Republican Party, and on the right side of the Republican Party was Barry Goldwater. And so Nelson Rockefeller gets up and he gives a speech and says, we have to work together. We have to go down the middle. And he got booed. He actually got booed. And then Barry Goldwater followed him and gave that famous speech where he said, extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice. And moderation in something was no virtue, and seeking consensus or something like that is no virtue. So anyhow, where are we going with this, Sam?
Yeah, where I'm going with this is okay. Now that you bring up Barry Goldwater, it brings up to like a topic I was going to talk about, but no. Some magazine in the 80s, the 60s, talked about Barry Goldwater's mental health. They thought he was mentally unstable, and then he sued the magazine for libel and won. And it apparently, I heard from the website Vox, it set a precedent for cases like this when we actually have a mentally unstable president, and like the Goldwater rule.
Yeah, the Goldwater rule is something that was, I don't know about a lawsuit against a magazine. What I do know is that there were a number of people in the psychiatric, psychological, psychotherapeutic community profession who in the early 60s were very concerned about Barry Goldwater. And everybody was concerned about nuclear war. I mean, you have to understand the hysteria around nuclear war in the 1960s was greater than the hysteria around, ISIS and Al Qaeda after 9/11. Even my dad bought a house in Lansing that had a basement. And in fact, houses with basements were being sold with the benefit of, if there's a nuclear war, you've got a basement, right? And he actually, and people were building fallout shelters. And my dad actually had a contractor come out and talk to him about what would it take to put a subfloor underneath the main floor of the house, right above the basement, and put 3 inches of dirt on it, soil on it, which would prevent radiation from getting to the basement, so we could all hide in the basement in the event of a nuclear war. That's how frightened people were. And so when Goldwater came along in '64 and Lyndon Johnson ran that ad, and it only ran once, that daisy ad, it appeared on television one time, where the little girl is pulling the daisy and it ends with a nuclear bomb going off. When that happened, you had all these people in the mental health profession freaking out and saying, Barry Goldwater could lead us to this because of his extreme paranoia, around the Soviet Union. And that led the American Psychiatric Association to I believe it was the Psychiatric Association, it might have been the American Psychological Association. They kind of compete, but they have different groups. But it led one of them to come up with what is to this day called the Goldwater Rule, which is you don't diagnose political figures unless you personally know them. And if you personally know them, then your diagnosis has to be in confidence because of patient-client confidentiality.
Okay, I feel like that's kind of dumb because I've met a sociopath, many actually in my life, and it's actually really dumb if you drag them into a therapist office because they're just going to lie their way out of it.
Right.
So what's the
sociopaths
point?
Are very charming. In fact, that's one of the more common characteristics
You were a psychotherapist.
Briefly, yeah,
right?
and I was rostered by the state of Vermont, but and I ran for 5 years. Although I did mostly the administrative and fundraising stuff, Louise actually ran the staff that was doing therapy and working with kids. But we ran a community for abused kids. But yeah, Sam, I need to move along. But thank you for the call. I thought you were calling about Andrew Yang, but anyhow, Kevin in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Hey, Kevin, what's on your mind today?
Well, Tom, I wanted to talk about the weather map and how the crime is actually the display of the map and not the marking up, which I'm afraid that he'll pass that off as somebody else did that. But it's him displaying the map.
Yes, you're right.
in front.
You're absolutely right. I mean, you can buy a map from the Weather Service and do anything you want to it, but if you present it to the public as real, then you have committed a crime. Spot on, Kevin. Thank you very much. Rick in Norman, Oklahoma. Hey, Rick, what's up?
Oh, it's Richard. And
Richard, I'm
hi,
sorry.
Tom.
Hey, Richard.
Honored. I'm calling out. I'm still a big Marianne Williamson supporter because she seems to be the person that mostly gets the ideological issue that is where Trump is running from. And I'm at the moment very terrified by the Bolsonaro situation, because that's, again, you've bounced around so many with the Nazis.
You mean Jair Bolsonaro in Brazil?
Yeah, because it's like a playbook. It's like you were reading it from the Rise of Hitler. It's like they are still following that religion, and he's done exactly that.
And ditto for Hungary, and ditto for Poland, and ditto for the Philippines, and apparently there's a few other countries that are trying to, or movements that are certainly trying to move in that direction, including the new hard right, the Alternative for Germany movement in Germany, and Marine Le Pen's movement in France.
Yeah, and I wanted to say, like, any kind of supremacism is delusions based upon delusions.
Yeah.
And one of the things about writing really good fiction, I've found, is that to be able to write a world that is so self-consistently believable that people can drop into it, and that's what the whole biblical stuff is. People have been believing it for generations and generations and keep on selling it. And it doesn't matter if it's false, because they have their self-consistency to it all. So, but delusional.
Well, I think that's all. Much like science, this is all an attempt to understand and make sense of the things that don't make sense on their surface. Why do people get sick? Why do people die? Why do disasters happen? Why is gravity? All these kinds of things. And initially what we had to explain these phenomena was religion. Richard, thank you for the call. I thought you were calling about the Electoral College. Apparently we were all wandering all over the place. Julie in Coletta, Illinois. Hey, Julie, what's up?
Hi, yes. I heard you say somebody was calling in on Andrew Yang, but they might have dropped their call.
No, he went off on a completely different topic.
I want to make a statement about Andrew Yang.
Okay, good.
Okay, so I thought he did a phenomenal job.
I agree. When he was on our program, I was very impressed with him, and
he had a really sharp performance, and I think that he answered the questions pretty swiftly and concisely. In fact, I think it felt like he answered more questions than some of the other candidates, who, in my opinion, kind of floundered a little bit.
Yeah, Andrew Yang is just an absolute no-nonsense guy. He's not there to become your best friend, and he's not there to do any kind of song and dance. He's just like, hey, I understand this stuff. Let me explain it to you. That's what he's doing.
Yeah, and I was glad that Wolf was able to bring up his UBI, which is his flagship
Universal Basic Income. Yeah.
Right, and so I thought he connected that pretty well with, not just economic disparity and crisis, but the climate change crisis.
Yeah.
So,
if he's not,
I think he's right. You got to take that food off the neck, and then people can kind of look up and see what's going on around them.
I think he's absolutely right. And I can't think of a single Andrew Yang policy with which I disagree. Again, I doubt he's going to be the nominee, but I think he's a really good guy and a great candidate, and I think he adds to the Democratic Party, and I have a feeling that he has a great future in this party.
Polling number 6, and that doesn't get a lot of attention.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And frankly, as the number 6 in the polls, he should be getting more media than he is, because you've got people below him who are getting a lot more media than him, and that's problematic.
And you know what? That's going to change because we got a strong Yang gang. So
okay, all right,
we're going to make it happen.
Keep at it, Julie. Thanks a lot for the call. Good talking to you. Kathy in Santa Rosa, California. Hey, Kathy, what's up?
Hi, yay, hello, how are you?
Good. We have a minute to the break, so quick one.
Oh, God. Okay. I'm calling for 2 reasons. One, I hope I don't want to get into the socialism label, because everybody who is running under the Democratic Party is going to be labeled a socialist.
Democratic Party, yes. There's no such thing as a Democrat Party.
No, I thought I said Democratic Party.
Oh, perhaps you did. I'm sorry. I'm just hypersensitive about that, Kathy. Go, continue. My apologies.
Yeah, so am I. So I think I don't want to get into this whole thing of, because we're all going to be labeled that. I mean, we used to be labeled liberal, and then we didn't like that, so we changed our name.
Yeah.
So, but I have a concern about how we talk about this, and I've been trying to do something within my own inner circle, is like, what are we looking for outside of who can beat Trump? What's going to happen from January 20th on
after the inauguration?
What are they bringing?
Right. Who do we want to govern the United States? And I think that really should be the question. I think we're spending way too much time focusing on who can beat Trump. I think, frankly, any rational Democrat can beat Trump. Kathy, thank you for the call. We'll be back. It's 48 minutes past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
You win the water cooler wars 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. We're right here on the Thom Hartmann Program. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Leon in the United Kingdom, in England. Hey, Leon, what's up? Thanks for watching us on YouTube.
Hi. Listen, I know this is a bit off topic with, what you've been talking about with Biden, but I just wanted to give your U.S. listeners a quick heads up on just what a momentous occasion, or occasion is the wrong word, really, just how big a thing is what's happening with the UK as far as Parliament is concerned at the moment, with the fact that Boris Johnson he's lost his first 4 votes in the UK Parliament, and
he's lost almost over 30 members of his party, hasn't he?
Exactly, kicked out. One of them was Winston, his own brother, walked out on him. Yep. Left the party. Not only left his cabinet, but left the party.
Right, and they kicked out Winston Churchill's grandson.
That's right. I mean, who kicks out Churchill's grandson, for God's sake? He's so unpopular. You have to remember that he was never voted in. The British people never voted in. He was voted in by less than 60,000 Tory members, and they tend to be your older, waspy, white, middle-class voters.
Well, they voted him in. The Tory voter, correct me if I'm misunderstanding your political system, Leon, but I thought that the party would basically say this is going to be the guy, but they're not the ones who actually put him in the prime ministership. They're the ones who said, if our party gets the power, this is the guy who's going to be the prime minister. So it basically was...
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Spot on.
Thank you.
But
so actually, he was put into place by a couple hundred members of the House of Commons.
Exactly, exactly. And the thing is that he's so unpopular that like you say, 20 odd have already been kicked out. his own brothers walked out. The thing is, he's lost votes, which is unheard of. He's lost his first 4 votes in Parliament.
Well, it's not unheard of. Didn't Theresa May lose a series of votes around Brexit?
Sorry, she lost a lot, and that's why she ended up
out
losing the premiership.
Right.
Now he started with all this bravado. I'm going to leave by the 21st. Trust me, I'm a man. You know, it needs a man to be able to do this, and you know, and so he started off with all this, and within hours, he's losing, and the thing is, he's now the only option open to him is to call for a general election, and the trouble is that the Labour Party, they know, because he's promised that he would have got he would have got the UK out of the EU by the 31st of October. He knows that he's never going to be able to do that. Right. And so that they're not going to call for a general. The Labour Party are not going to call for a general election until after the 31st of October. I can hear your music.
Yeah, I think you're right, Leon. Isn't that mostly because they're afraid they'll be voted out of office?
He's going to be the shortest ever Prime Minister in history.
I think you're right.
Mark my words.
There you go. I think you're right. You know, brought to you by Steve Bannon and friends. Leon, thanks a lot for the call. We'll be right back. You know, every day here on the Thom Hartmann Program, Louise and I and our team, Sean, Nate, Shira, Dave, Chase, Sue, Nigel, Ron, we all work to put together the very, very best show we possibly can. And there's an enormous amount of work that goes into the show. And one of the things that comes out of that is a lot of content, a lot of specific information that we go through and we dig out and, you know, we want to share with you. And Sue puts that into our newsletter every week. And I think you will, if you don't already receive our newsletter, it comes in email every day, about an hour after we're off the air, or maybe a couple hours after we're off the air. And Sue goes through and pulls literally every link to every story that we talked about and puts it into the newsletter. It's free. We don't sell a list or anything. You complete safety and security. There's no charge. There's no nothing. Just, you know, plug in your email address over at thomhartmann.com. And you get signed up for the newsletter. It's all fairly obvious. You'll see it on the website. So check it out, thomhartmann.com. Thank you. And welcome back. Reginald in in Houston, Texas. Do I have that right, Reginald?
Hey, that is correct. I'm here in Houston. It's on a little outskirts there. You probably on the call IDs out of A-Leaf. But Thank you for taking my call, Tom. Appreciate you. You know, we just got through coming off of Labor Day. You know, we've been dealing here in Houston here with the Sugarland 95, the individual 95 fighters we found who was in a convict lease system that came out of the 13th Amendment, and that was all about labor. And now we're talking about a little reparation. We're talking about reparations, came out of slavery, and then these people were enslaved. And I was listening to what Dr. King said in April 4th, 1967, Riverside Church, when he was ostracized by everybody, including the black clergy and a lot of the black community, because he went against the war. He said that money that we spend toward war, we could be using it toward the Poor People's Campaign. I think Reverend Barber and they're trying to do that now. Mm-hmm. I was listening to Bernie Sanders. And Bernie Sanders was saying the same thing I'm saying, Tom, the other night about taking that money from the war budget and using it for something else, like we're using it for the wall. We could use it for reparations or a lot of other things, or something even like what the New Deal, that went back in the 1930s, when we redid America out of that war spending budget, which we never audited, and we need to find out what's in it. We don't need to be killing people, and especially we talking about peace and Christian people and, following Jesus and Christ-like, Prince of Peace.
Completely agree, Reginald. Completely agree. And Dr. King's legacy, lives on in a whole lot of different areas. And Reverend Barber is really carrying that flame. Reginald, thank you so much for the call. Let's see here. Jonathan in Englewood, New Jersey, listening to WBAI. Hey, Jonathan, what's up?
I was going to talk about the structural necessity of impeachment once the Justice Department started denying the oversight of Congress. Mm-hmm. But I think the caller just called in hit the nail on the head, which is we're defining security by this bloated military budget, the most grotesque part of it being the president's pledge of $1.7 trillion to modernize the nuclear arsenal and make it more useful.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm completely with you. Jonathan, I'm sorry, I got to run. We're hitting the end of the show here. I hope you call in again and we can have a little longer conversation. Thank you so much. And thank you for being with us today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. And in the meantime, please, don't forget, KNO, know this, and don't forget that democracy doesn't just happen. You have to work at it. So get out there, get active. It's not enough to just, complain, right? Get out there, get active, tag, you're it. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.